The Speaker has ruled that the following measures will be adopted and try to assist members who may not be able to participate in a debate due to connectivity challenges. 1, if a member has problems with connectivity, as in unable to deliver his or her speech, the presiding officer will call the next speaker on the speaker's list so as to delay the not to delay the proceedings. If the member regains connectivity before a response to a debate has commenced, the presiding officer will be flexible and allow the affected member to deliver his or her speech, with the proviso that the member reconnects to the sitting prior to the commencement of the response to the debate. Secondly, we request that member who is scheduled to participate in a debate should arrange a fellow party member to be on standby to read the member's speech into the record should the need arise. The presiding officer will allow a fellow party member to read out the speech on behalf of a member who is unable to deliver his or her own speech. If all interventions fail and a member is unable to deliver his or her speech and has not managed to arrange for a fellow party member or a whip to deliver the speech on his or her behalf, the speech will unfortunately not form part of the official record of proceedings. In short, honorable members, if a member have connectivity problems, the presiding officers will follow the above guidance to try and assist them. We trust that this is in order. And lastly, members who are not actively part of a debate are reminded to mute their microphones and switch off their cameras at all times. Also, members are requested to take all reasonable measures to reduce any background noises that may interfere with the broadcasting of the proceedings. Honorable members, I further wish to confirm that the budget report 2022 and 23 of the Portfolio Committee on Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs has been tabled in terms of the standing rules. We will now proceed with the matters on the agenda, being the debate on vote 4. We are going to have this debate is going to take us 175 minutes in total. If I break it down, it will be the report by the MEC, which will take 45 minutes, then the chairperson's report, also 10 minutes, then the report by the Environmental Affairs on vote 4. 10 minutes, bese kuba a debate ezoba 90 minutes, bese kuba a response by the MEC ezothatha 20 minutes. Mangabe engathi mparishanga nanakhuzane yakhe nesikhathi sakhe mhlawumbe masatheblisha report yakhe. Ngicela ukubiza umhlonishwa MEC Honorable R.R. Pillay, the MEC for Economic and Tourism, azokethula report yakhe.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, Premier and members of the Executive in absentia, honorable members of this House, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, and all those who are observing online, comrades and friends. Honorable Speaker and Chair, all of us in this legislature will, for the rest of our lives, remember these very trying years of economic recession, COVID-19, the July 2021 unrest, and the April 2022 floods. We have been tested, and tested yet again. We have despaired, some may have faltered, and yet others fallen. But we have not been broken. We have risen after every blow, determined to be true to our province and its people, all our people. Everywhere I go, locals and visitors alike hail our resilience. On Monday, the day before yesterday, I attended in Hammersdale the official launch of a 650 million rand investment by Kzn Foods, which is one of the projects committed to at the 2018 Presidential Investment Conference and facilitated by ETIA's entity Trade and Investment, KZN. Kzn Foods is an Irish company employing 22,000 people worldwide. The event was attended by the group CEO and managers from different parts of the world. They believe in KZN. They speak of a, and I quote, hub and spoke strategy in developing their business worldwide. For Africa, their hub will be here in KwaZulu-Natal, Hammersdale. The spokes will be to link other countries in Africa, such as Kenya, and to capitalize on the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. This was a practical realization and manifestation of our mission statement when we promote KwaZulu-Natal as a gateway to Africa and to the world. I cite this example with belief and confidence. This is not to gloss over the terrible pain and suffering waged by COVID-19, the July unrest, and the floods. Indeed, it is because the pain was so deep and the danger so great that we must believe in ourselves. Our resilience is real. Today, we table a budget that shall propel us above the triple hits of COVID-19, July unrest, and April 2022 floods. As Alexandra Vassiliou wrote in 2019, and I quote, "No matter how many times you have experienced pain, fight to rise from your ashes, win your hope back, soak up all the good thoughts and channel them onto love. You are a phoenix. Your heart deserves to bloom again. Fight," unquote. Indeed, KwaZulu-Natal is that phoenix, that immortal bird that cyclically regenerates. We have girded our loins, ready to push ourselves above the COVID-19 ashes. To get us out of the COVID-19 social unrest and floods, we shall fight to do many things, and I list some of them. Elevate job creation to be at the center of all our service delivery programs, increase provision of support to provincial enterprises, boost expenditure on catalytic infrastructure to unlock further investment, tackle barriers to growth, widen export markets for locally manufactured goods, aggressively market KwaZulu-Natal as a premier destination of choice, promote skills development, increase air connectivity to KZN, develop efficient regional airports to support tourism, promote innovation to increase international competitiveness of local enterprises, conclude the rationalization of public enterprises, automate business licensing to stamp out illegal trade, stimulate rural and township economies, support formal and informal enterprises, and not least, accelerate our broadband connectivity. Honorable Speaker, the last IMF World Economic Outlook reported that the global economy grew by 5.9% in 2021 and is projected to grow by 4.9% in 2022, averaging 3.3% over the medium term. This growth is, of course, dominated by advanced economies, which are expected to recover early from the COVID-19 pandemic situation due to policy support interventions and opening up of global value chains. At the same time, sub-Saharan Africa was expected to grow by an average of 3.7% in 2021, lower than the global growth rate of 5.9%. Amid COVID-19 restrictive measures, slow vaccination rollout, limited fiscal space, and growing debt burden. However, the global growth optimism has been dampened by the geopolitical developments, which saw the Russia-Ukraine war at the end of March. The conflict has since disrupted the recovery of many global economies, creating much uncertainty. The impact of the war flows through three channels. Firstly, higher prices for commodities such as food and energy will fuel inflation, in turn eroding the value of incomes and weighing on demand. Secondly, neighboring economies in particular will grapple with disrupted trade, supply chains, and remittances as well as a historic surge in refugee flows. Thirdly, reduced business confidence and higher investor uncertainty will potentially spur capital outflows from emerging markets. The greatest challenge for most developing countries in the immediate term will be high energy costs, high food prices, and disrupted global value chains dampening growth prospects. On the domestic front, South Africa is projected to grow by 2% in 2022 and 2023, a noticeable slowdown from the projected 4.8% in 2021. While not inspiring, this will still be a much better growth performance than the 5-year period before the onset of COVID-19. This forecast implies that real GDP returns to the pre-COVID-19 levels in the third quarter of 2022. The local economy had some decent momentum in early 2022. This was helped by government's decision to further loosen lockdown restrictions at the end of 2021 amid indications that the fourth domestic COVID-19 wave had peaked. While the upbeat start to the year is most welcome, we do not expect particularly robust real GDP growth for the entire 2022. Downside risks include more severe than expected load shedding, as seen in recent months, the high likelihood of a fifth COVID wave, well, already happening, I should think, and potentially a sixth wave later in the year. Local monetary policy will also be less accommodative in 2022, and we've already seen 2 interest rate hikes recently. In addition to the domestic constraints, which are likely to cap the potential recovery in business confidence and private sector fixed investment, a less supportive global economic environment is another factor that suggests domestic real GDP growth could slow sharply in 2022. And as I've mentioned, the war between Russia and Ukraine has increased these downside risks. Following the unfortunate civil unrest witnessed in July 2021 in our province and some parts of Gauteng, our government swiftly embarked on a mission to stabilize the situation through coordinating and mobilizing security cluster departments to work on quelling the mayhem. We engaged players in all key industries, particularly the food and fuel value chain. We quelled racial tensions mushrooming between various communities by directing law enforcement to deal with criminal actions of individuals, and at the same time engage leaders in affected communities. This work remains a historical mission for all of us. We formulated a comprehensive post-social unrest economic recovery blueprint, which inter alia included supporting the informal economy, assisting companies to access relief measures, and supporting rebuilding initiatives. In August 2021, the Premier led a team of MECs and senior government officials to Pretoria, where we engaged members of the diplomatic corps, demonstrating the stability that had just been restored in the province. At this session, bilateral meetings were held with a number of ambassadors representing the largest component of multinational investors in KZN. The purpose was to give a detailed assurance of the state of the economy in our province and our approach to ensuring safety and security of investments within the province. Post this session, we have since hosted a number of ambassadors who have pledged their support to KZN and are currently exploring partnership opportunities with key government departments and creating linkages between KwaZulu-Natal businesses with business from their respective countries. The provincial government worked closely with the development finance institutions to assist businesses affected by the July 2021 civil unrest. We are pleased to advise that to date substantial progress has been made, and I cite a few. The Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, through the Critical Infrastructure Recovery Program and working with the Industrial Development Corporation and the National Empowerment Fund, has disbursed 2.57 billion to 140 businesses in the province. This program has retained close to 50,000 jobs. The Department of Small Business Development has disbursed 109.7 million to 111 businesses in the province, out of a total of 439 applications. Trade and Investment KZN, our own entity in partnership with the IDC, has disbursed 30 million to 173 businesses, mostly in the townships and rural areas, supporting informal traders and SMEs in the retail, manufacturing and agro-processing businesses. This has resulted in over 1,000 direct jobs saved. The South African Special Risk Insurance Association, or SASRIA as we call it, received 15,120 claims totaling 36 billion rand. 26 billion is from 120 big claimants, at least 60 million and over, whilst 10 billion is for smaller claims up to a maximum of 60 million. 20 billion rand has been paid out to date, 12 billion to claims valued at 60 million and above, and 8 billion to claims below 60 million. SASRIA targets to have paid 28 billion by the end of March 2022, which we've already passed. SASRIA estimates losses from the July unrest to be around 56 billion rand. The provincial government, working with national government and the development financial institutions, are working out further programs to de-risk some hotspots, such as Moy River. Our own Itala Development Finance Corporation has completed minor repair works at its affected properties throughout the province to ensure tenants could trade again as quickly as possible. And the IDFC is working with SASRIA to rebuild 11 severely damaged properties. Contractors have already been appointed to rebuild 4 factories at Madadeni Industrial Estate and Nongoma Shopping Center. So too, with the KwaZulu-Natal Gaming and Betting Board, has provided relief measures which are set out in the document before you. Rebuilding the province after the dreadful floods. Honourable Speaker, as the economic reconstruction and rebuilding efforts post-COVID-19 and July 2021 unrest gathered momentum, we woke up in the morning of 12th April to the devastating news of floods that affected the province, with severe impact being experienced in Ntegwini, Ilembe, Ugu, Kinkajwayo, and Mgungundlovu districts. On farms, crops, livestock, and infrastructure were destroyed, thereby threatening food security in the province. National, provincial, regional, and local roads, bridges, railway lines, and telecommunication infrastructure were damaged. Sewer lines, water treatment plants, water pipes, drainage systems, electricity infrastructure, and commercial and residential buildings were washed away. The economic impact is conservatively estimated at close to 20 billion rand. As a result of this, a number of households and businesses went for weeks, and some are still going, without water and electricity, putting further strain on economic recovery. We appreciate the response from our national government, the private sector, and non-governmental organizations who have all rallied to support us with humanitarian assistance and the rebuilding of infrastructure. The following are key to economic recovery. Restore road access to the Port of Durban, in particular Bayhead Road infrastructure and rail infrastructure and full operational efficiency. N2, R102 and secondary roads, shelter for workers who have been displaced, and restoring of public infrastructure in respect of sewerage, drainage, water and electricity, as well as restoration of internet connectivity and network. Much interim work has already been done, with some examples of exemplary initiative and creativity. With regard to internet connectivity, I can say we are largely restored, and it was an example of where we are able to pull together people in a multi-sectoral way to restore network as quickly as possible. Another example would have been the Mlazi Bridge, which was causing a massive gridlock on a key economic area, but an exemplary example of engineering skill and social facilitation resulted in that being done within a week. Another example was Transnet, where the Bayhead Bridge, where 1,300 trucks a day go. 1,300 trucks a day, just imagine that. And that was totally disrupted for just 24 hours. And within 48 to 72 hours, they restored almost fully. We had a risk of fuel supply. I recall a headline and people going to garages and saying that they ran out of fuel. There was that potential, but it's because we had responded with speed, pulling all resources together, that we were able to make it happen. It even included consultation and facilitation with the community of Bluff and their ward councillor to make sure that trucks could go through a residential area in that intervening in that intervening period. So much work has been done, and I think if we look at the percentages, at one stage we have probably only had 40% water supply. It's now sitting at about 85 to 90%, and similarly with electricity and sanitation and roads. I think today it was announced that the short detour, Mr. Naidu, in your part of the world, the road N2 South will be reopened completely on Sunday. So all of this doesn't just happen by accident. It requires hard work and coordination for it to be effective. In addition, the following support packages have been introduced. The Minister of Kokta, of course, declared the floods as a state of disaster, and this has enabled us to use certain fast-tracking mechanisms. As a department, we have activated Section 30A of the National Environmental Management Act, which deals with authorizations for emergency situations. But I must caution that this is not a blanket authorization. We still need some basic paperwork and identification, but we have committed to do so with speed in respect of the authorizations. The Department of Small Business Development has unveiled 60 million rand recovery, which is made up of 50 million for small business and 10 million for the informal sector. The package entails access of between 2 million and 10 million by formal businesses and 10,000 rand for informal businesses. DTIC, through the Industrial Development Corporation, has availed a 500 million recovery package for infrastructure rebuilding, bridging finance for businesses, recapitalization, and working capital. The package targets businesses that are not insured, those that are insured, and those that are underinsured. The fund is from a minimum of 1 million and is capped at 60 million per applicant, and this is a combination of grant and loans. Trade and Investment KZN is in advanced discussions with the IDC to lobby for additional financial support for businesses that have gone into distress. IDFC, that's Itala, has identified a number of properties within their industrial parks which are available for companies that would like to temporarily or permanently relocate their business operations while the rebuilding program is underway. Going forward, we will work with the Tegwini municipality, where the most of the damage occurred, and other flood-prone districts to develop long-term solutions to deal with floods. Some of these strategies include the following: adherence to environmental laws in terms of human settlements and agriculture, and the debate downstairs at the moment will probably deal with that in more detail. And we don't want to see socio-economic activities on the waterways, river banks, and river mouths, resettlement of communities away from flood-prone areas, draft climate resilient and flood management strategy, design flooding resilient infrastructure, and efficient drainage systems and stormwater management systems. This next, the photograph on the left is one of those dramatic damages in one of the business areas. The photograph on the right is for the Honorable De Boer. It was in his constituency or neighboring in Mjloti. It wasn't quite someone talking down to me like the old days, but it was a local resident. But this is a number of cases where local residents are getting organized and bringing forward good ideas. It's on page 11, Honorable De Boer. And they had come up with ideas of how to redesign that Mjloti area, which was badly washed away, with some environmentally or aesthetically improved methods. Some challenges and setbacks. Honorable Speaker, it is important that we continue to confront challenges that face us and account on how we are dealing with them. Business disruptions. The provincial government has remained firm against disruption of business operations and construction sites by vigilante business forums. In this regard, we welcome the recent arrest of people who invaded and made demands at the Durban High Court construction site. Although this is a project of the National Department of Public Works, we have a keen interest in the speedy and successful completion of the project. It will not only be a huge boost to the efficient functioning of the High Court, but it is also a timeless boost to the regeneration of the inner city. In this regard, we commend the security cluster and the MEC for Community Safety and Liaison, my colleague MEC Nkonieni, for their quick and effective response, which speaks to their commitment to fulfilling the undertakings that government has made in engagements with organized business. We have been very clear and consistent in our message If so-called business fora want to behave like a mafia-style protection racket, the law must take its course swiftly and uncompromisingly. If people want to engage genuinely about empowerment opportunities, then our doors will be open for good faith engagement. These engagements are guided by the following non-negotiable principles. 1, a clear and emphatic rejection of any criminal conduct. 2, respect for all procurement processes within the framework of the law. Current preferential procurement legal framework can be lawfully accessed for work opportunities. Engagements will not protect anyone from consequences for any prior unlawful conduct. Through the above approach, we have drastically reduced the incidence of business disruptions and site occupations in the province. And I think there was an official study that was released yesterday that indicated so. However, we shall not rest on our laurels. We will continue to closely monitor the situation. We will continue to engage. We refuse to be defined as a lawless province, and we call upon all our social partners to work with us in fighting this scourge of business disruption. On foreign nationals, let us state emphatically, we are not xenophobic. Honorable Speaker, this matter has raised its ugly head and resulted in wanton opportunism from some individuals and formations that foreign nationals are displacing South Africans from employment opportunities. We wish to state categorically that we are part of Africa and have cordial relations with our fellow brothers and sisters in Africa. As any other sovereign country, we have laws and rules of employment that should be respected. Our policies are very clear about prioritizing South Africans for employment opportunities, whilst recognizing that scarce skills could be sourced from anywhere in the world. We urge the Department of Employment and Labor to speedily finalize the proposed changes in the overall legal framework. On SAPRAF, as per the announcement of the Premier during his State of the Province address, the provincial government of KwaZulu-Natal learned with great shock and dismay of the decision by SAPRAF shareholders, namely Shell and BP, to indefinitely suspend refinery operations in Durban at the end of March 2022. The announcement came not long after Engen Refinery announced a similar decision regarding their refinery operations in Durban. The recently approved Economic Reconstruction and Transformation Plan identifies the oil refining sector as a strategic sector for growth of the KwaZulu-Natal economy. We have the firm view that retaining refinery operations in the province is key for economic growth and job creation rather than solely relying on importing refined fuel. We recently met with all key stakeholders in the oil industry following the unfortunate unrest to discuss strategies for supporting and protecting this industry. However, we need to understand and navigate this with astuteness. We must understand that this decision in the context of world dynamics in the energy sector and the impact of climate change on cost factors. What does this mean? This means simply that worldwide they are closing down the small and older refineries. They are focusing on what is called the 7 super refineries, which are in various parts of the world, mostly in the Middle East. The economies of scale make better sense for them, but we think the bigger factor is the cost of complying with modernizing their equipment to be able to deal with the legislation around climate change. And next year in our own country is a deadline for many of these companies to be able to comply. So we think that's a big factor. But we're going to give full support to our National Department of Energy in some negotiations to see what we could possibly salvage in this situation. Job creation is central to everything that we do. Honorable Speaker, the pandemic hit us hard. Household incomes fell rapidly. Many small businesses could not survive the shutdown, while most of the survivors faced deep liquidity constraints. The social unrest deepened the crisis, and unemployment remains the leading challenge that necessitates immediate policy priority. The rest of that page sets out some numbers on the job creation, and I'm going to go through them very quickly. On the EPWP side, we had 195,603 job opportunities in this last financial year. The special economic zones, Dube Trade Port and Richards Bay, jointly contributed 4,499 jobs. Elsewhere in the province, we have attracted new investments to the tune of 5.5 billion in various sectors that have contributed 8,875 jobs. The enhancement of national roads, such as the N2 and N3 by SANRAIL, has also contributed in excess of 7,000 opportunities. A total of 5,351 jobs were created within the informal sector, both through issuing of new permits and new licenses. The provincial government has also created many other job opportunities through initiatives such as regional airports, SMME support, informal infrastructure development, and sectorial interventions. We hosted a hugely successful intra-Africa trade fair in 2021, and if time permits, we'll speak a bit about that. During the week of the 16th to 20th May, that's next week, South Africa will host the 5th Global Conference on the Elimination of Child Labor together with the International Labour Organization. This is significant. Both the Africa Travel Indaba last week and the UN conference next week, both of which will be held at the ICC. Travel Indaba had about 5,000 delegates spread over 3 days. The UN conference is likely to have 10,000 delegates spread over 5 days. And this is a significant boost for our local tourism industry and evidence that we are beginning to bounce back and beginning to manage our COVID-19 conditions. Operation Vula Fund, our non-negotiable commitment to develop and transform the economy, saw our province through ETIA registering significant achievements in the empowerment of small business. The Operation Vula Fund targeted the opening up of opportunities for historically disadvantaged groups within the provincial economy, that is, those who demonstrate sustainable and profitable initiatives that create jobs, gained traction in the previous year. The fund became a key instrument, and since the launch of the fund's first round, 1,016 applications worth 339.2 million were approved in various sectors of the economy. And I dare say this was spread across all districts and has been the single biggest impact on SMMEs in the province. On radical agrarian socio-economic transformation, our government attaches great importance to delivering effective agricultural support services to the provincial agricultural community. The Radical Agrarian and Socio-Economic Transformation, or RACIT initiative, was introduced as a far-reaching program that will transform the structure of the agricultural value chains in the province. Under this program, 608 small-scale farmers, majority of whom were females, were assisted with market access that saw produce valued at 34.6 million sold during the first 3 quarters of 2021 financial year. The RACIT program has secured 24 private and 3 government markets, creating 595 jobs in the process. Let me also take this opportunity to confirm that as from the beginning of this financial year, RACIT has now been officially transferred to DARD, that's the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. This has really been a signal success which we must build upon. Township and rural strategy. Honourable Speaker, the KwaZulu-Natal government is committed to ensuring that the rural and township economy contributes significantly to the provincial economy. The Provincial Executive Council recently adopted the Township and Rural Economy Revitalization Strategy, which sets out a program of action illustrating how government, together with key stakeholders, will lead the revitalization of township and rural economies. As part of the Economic and Reconstruction and Transformation Plan, it becomes a cross-cutting issue for all sectors. So whether you talk manufacturing, whether you talk tourism, whether you talk agriculture, whether you talk logistics, we must ask the question, how is this impacting on our township and rural economy? Spatial planning has become critical for township and rural economies so the state can keep pace with the economy developing within the sector. So we see in many cases uncontrolled development within this space and then becomes not sustainable. The taxi industry is an important role player in both urban and rural transportation systems. The industry provides employment for a large number of people and circulates significant amounts of money. The taxi industry must be given the same attention and respect that we give to our chambers of business. Our approach to supporting township and rural businesses include, amongst others, allocating space to local entrepreneurs at discounted rates, localization of supply chain, including mall occupants, subcontracting of key areas of security, cleaning, maintenance, etc., equity share scheme for local black industrialists and small businesses, and provide comprehensive support to SMMEs in areas such as access to training, finance, markets, infrastructure, and tools of trade. The impact of this strategy in the future will be a key measure of our commitment to transformation. Gaming and betting. Transformation of this sector remains a key mandate of the KZN Gambling and Betting Board, especially in terms of promoting economic growth in sectors lacking participation. Significant progress has been made in the black-owned betting sector, which saw a marked increase from 27% in 2012 to 80% in 2021. The funding emanating from the application of the KwaZulu-Natal Gaming and Betting Amendment Bill, which is, I think, in the legislature, and we hope it will be passed soon, will provide the vehicle to address the inequities of the past. The key focus areas includes capacitation of the traditional horse racing sector, improvement of infrastructure, upskilling of jockeys and horse owners through funding of industry-related training programs. The Gaming and Betting Board Black Industrialist Program is a vehicle to implement radical economic development and job creation. The program supports component manufacturing projects within the gaming sector, and the total investment for potential projects is 292 million, which can support a total of 210 jobs. I'm just trying to keep track. I think I'm going to be very, very short, but the speaker will be flexible and take time from my response. Thank you. On enterprise development, small businesses and cooperatives are an integral part of our drive to build an inclusive economy. The following profound statements by eminent authors are instructive. When inequality gets too extreme, then it becomes useless for growth, and it can even become bad because it tends to lead to higher perpetuation of inequality over time and low mobility. We want capitalism and other market forces to be the slave of democracy rather than the opposite. And that's a statement by a renowned economist, Thomas Piketty. Another one is by a well-known W.E.B. Du Bois, and this one is for the Honorable Duma. We should measure the prosperity of a nation not by the number of millionaires, but the absence of poverty, the prevalence of health, the efficiency of public schools, and the number of people who can and do read worthwhile books. I'm saying that a bit tongue-in-cheek to Honorable Duma because we want to have millionaires, but it can't be the prime focus. As at 31 December 2021, the Enterprise Development Fund received 334 loan applications from SMMEs. And the rest of that page is giving you some statistics of the number of SMMEs assisted, what type of assistance they received, and the amounts of money involved in that assistance. And having regard to my time constraints, I'm not going to take it further. If you can go to the next page, 18. In March 2021, the implementation phase of Operation Sakinzuzo, a program to support small-scale sugarcane farmers, was concluded. This program has resulted in 3,014 hectares of sugar grown on freehold and communal land. 2,470 seasonal jobs were supported with 25 million in wages paid, 287 small-scale growers benefiting, 24 cooperative beneficiaries, 12 contractors, and 4 input suppliers supported. Thus far, the beneficiaries have delivered 169,500 tons of sugarcane and generated 117 million in revenue since the inception of the program. We will continue to monitor and expand this program until 2023. In the 2021-22 financial year, our 3-year collaboration with the South African Farmers Development Association to support small-scale sugar growers, or SSGs, commenced. This included a once-off transport subsidy of 3.5 million for Makatini small-scale growers to transport their cane to the Felixton mill, whilst the Mkuze rail siding was being upgraded. I am pleased to report that in excess of 600 SSGs benefited from this subsidy, and that the upgrading of the rail siding is almost complete. In the next season, the SSGs will transport their cane to Felixton via rail. The transport cost was the biggest single factor inhibiting their growth. 731 SSGs in the Sazela catchment area benefited from this support, and over the next 2 years, this collaboration will continue with support provided in the northern and Midlands sugar growing areas. We then go to describe to some detail the catalytic infrastructure support that we have provided as a department through its entities. Itala IDFC property in Kwamashu has been refurbished and equipped to operate a shared facility for production of detergents. The facility was successfully completed and commissioned in Kwamashu on 1st June 2021. To date, 35 SMMEs and cooperatives are being incubated at the facility. We hope to be able to establish 2 more facilities in King Cetshwayo and Ugu district municipalities. But I must pause and say that as much as we put in a significant investment and 35 cooperatives being operative is a significant achievement, but there are also operational challenges where SMMEs seem to expect to have more and more inputs. In one case, they wanted to have a stipend while they're developing their own business, which becomes a little bit not sustainable. Yeah, let me leave that there. DTIC has committed 49.9 million for phase 2 of the Siteba Industrial Estate revitalization to deal with fencing, roads, bulk water supply, and sewage treatment plants. The Development Bank of Southern Africa is the implementing agent. The project is 70% complete and has created 64 temporary jobs in the process. We are currently awaiting budget confirmation from DTIC for revitalization of the Madadeni and Ezakeni Industrial Park. The next 2 pages sets out in detail a support to over 12 municipalities with regard to the informal traders infrastructure, and it's there. Having regard to my time constraints, I'm not going to go into that in detail. If we can go to page 20 on investment promotion, the provincial government has stepped up efforts to attract both foreign direct investment and direct domestic investment into our priority sectors. The rand value of our investments to date into the province, mostly facilitated by trade and investment in this financial year, amounts to 5.3 billion rand, with 8,554 jobs to be created. And we are pleased to announce that through vigorous investment campaigns, the following major investments have been signed off in the province during the 2021-22 budget year. Tetra Pak 500 million, WebHelp Call Center 500 million, Blythedale Coastal 800 million, Capita BPO 120 million, Wilma Palm Oil Factory 1.1 billion, Toyota unfortunately hit badly by the floods but had a 2.6 billion, and a Mauritius-based company will be leasing 5 factories at the Ezakeni Industrial Estate involving 350 million rand investment. This is not to talk about not to mention the 1.5 billion at Sapi and Richards Bay final rollout of the 6.5 billion Zulti South expansion, as well as the Coro Brick investment of 6.5 billion again, backed by Investec Bank. So very strong relationships have been established with international stakeholders, embassies, trade offices, and bilateral chambers. The Department of Trade and Industry and Competition is a strong partner, and other economic development role players, Brand South Africa, DIRCO, and industry associations. We then go on to the next couple of pages to set out some of the promotional work that we have done and set out in detail there, and I am not going to go through that in line by line. I'm sure colleagues will be able to read through that. If you go to page 21, we refer to our special economic zones, Dube Trade Port and Richards Bay Industrial Zones, both of which, again, I'm not going to go through it in detail. A lot of the detail is set out there, but both of which are beginning to take off quite nicely, reaching a critical mass of developmental projects. The new special economic zone in respect of the clothing and textile is not formalized yet. There is an application with the DTIC, but we're taking a belt approach from Newcastle to Ladysmith, coming down towards the coast as far as the development of that SEZ is concerned. But the clothing and textile SEZ is showing enormous potential. Route development and air connectivity on page 25. Air connectivity is a critical driver of growth through trade facilitation and tourist movement. ETIA leads a multi-stakeholder committee that is dedicated to driving the coordination and promotion of international and domestic air services into King Shaka International Airport. Through the efforts of this committee, we have been able to restore Qatar and Emirates services, and more recently, Turkish Airlines announced its return in the first quarter of 2022-23, not to mention the return of SAA finally, who last time I checked were running flights 3 times a week between Durban and Johannesburg. If we go to page 26, the automotive supplier park is going to be a key multiplier in respect of job creations and SMME generation. In the south of Durban, Dubai Trade Port is working with Transnet to develop phase 1 of an automotive supplier park at the Durban Logistics Hub site, previously the old Durban International Airport site. The 62-hectare park is located just north of the Toyota assembly plant and is designed to accommodate suppliers to the automotive manufacturing industry. The target date for sites to be complete for handover is December 2023. Phase 2 of the automotive supplier park will be undertaken on a site owned by Dubai Trade Port at Ilovo. Of course, the construction of the terminal building at Mkhuze Airport to the value of 72.31 million is complete and has created 215 job opportunities. 13 of the 22 subcontractors used during construction are from the Mkhanyaguda district, thereby empowering SMMEs and the local community at large. We've also done work and made significant investments in the Margate Airport, Newcastle Airport, Pietermaritzburg Airport, the details of which are set out. A key strategic initiative for us as a province is the broadband rollout. Honorable Speaker, ETIA has successfully undertaken Wi-Fi services proof of concept in 3 districts, namely Lembe, Ugu, and Harigwala. Furthermore, topographical assessments across the province are currently underway in order to determine proper technological solutions to be deployed. A provincial ICT in Daba comprising all industry stakeholders will be hosted in partnership with the Office of the Premier during this first quarter of this financial year. The intent is to emerge with holistic, tangible proposals and solutions to the ICT challenge that the province is faced with by developing a cohesive and implementable strategy of deploying KZN broadband 4IR services and related ICT services, whilst building a smart province. Logistics and planning in this regard have commenced. Honourable members, tourism remains a key pillar of our economy, and despite the devastating impact of COVID-19 on tourism, a concerted drive to market the province as a preferred tourist destination saw the performance numbers improving over the last financial year. This is evidenced by the 2021 festive season performance numbers, which saw the province sitting at an average of 69% hotel occupancy compared to 62.3% in 2020. We are pleased to note that passenger numbers at King Shaka International Airport have steadily increased from 156,191 in January, climbing to 326,000 by December. In total, 2.8 million passengers passed through the airport, and this is 550,000 more than in 2020. However, this is still low, and we have to build this much further. Tourism infrastructure plays an important role in ensuring the supply side of our tourism remains sustainable, and the document in front of you sets out various individual projects which I'm not going to go through. The Convention Bureau remains quite busy in attracting conventions for the ICC. I've mentioned a couple already. A number of others which have been secured are listed on page 29. The 21st International Flight Inspection Symposium, the 28th International Ornithological Congress, the UN World Tourism Organization affiliate member plenary session, and the World Football Summit Africa from the 16th to 17th of November. As I mentioned, following a 2-year break, the Africa's travel in Durban was a welcome reinvigoration of the conference and the tourism sector, and the numbers of attendance is set out on that particular page with a 72 million rand immediate impact on our local economy. We're also pleased to announce the reviving of the East 3 route, and the picture there on page 29 shows the signing of the agreement between Mpumalanga, KZN, Mozambique, and Eswatini to collaborate in that particular project. The creative industries is becoming a new cutting-edge sector involving our young people, whether it's in respect to culture, the arts, and fashion, and film. And on page 29, 30, and 31, we set out the kind of activities that we've had. A sector which we either take the potential with both hands or throw it away is the call center industry. And what the report there sets out is that thus far, over the last 3 to 5 years, we've built it up to 12,000 people being employed in that sector, in Durban in particular. In fact, the KZN in South Africa received an award as the area with the best potential for growth in that call center sector. In fact, we have the potential to push it up to 500,000 jobs by 2030. Now, it's up to us whether we want to grab this opportunity, because we have the young people, we have the language skills, and we have a time zone that makes us very competitive in servicing the markets in the US, in the West, and in the East. What we must do is understand the nature of this job. It's young people, it's an entry job. It's wages that are subsidized by the DTIC, and that's why we become competitive. But being a call center operator is a stressful job, and therefore you have a high turnover. But do we reject it because it has a high turnover, or do we welcome it as an entry-level job for young people to get their first work experience? And I'm suggesting that we need to do that. We can't have the luxury of choosing. So that space becomes a bit contested, and I don't want to go into some details of that particular contestation, but I think we need to stand firm and say this is a sector that's providing us jobs for young people. We need to protect it and nurture it. The speech goes on to deal with agro-processing and the film industry, which I've mentioned, and I'm not going to go back to it. I do want to talk about the social compact that we need to continue to build as an economic council, which involves government, labor, civil society, and business. We have signed and committed to a social compact to work together. The challenge now is to cascade it down to district and local level. It can't just be at the provincial level where government leaders and provincial level business and labor meet. It needs to become real and go to the ground. These respective sectors need to know each other at the local level and work together at the local level in order to be able to solve common problems. The same principle applies to the, can I seek your permission for another 5 at least, and you can deduct that from my response time. Honorable Chair, my speech goes on to deal with the rationalization of public entities, skills development and innovation, and ports management. I just want to spend 30 seconds on this. We must all understand the key strategic importance of both the Durban Harbour and the Richards Bay Harbour. If it functions efficiently, there's a ripple effect for us. I mentioned earlier about 1,300 trucks a day that go in and out. If things are not working efficiently there, it has a ripple effect down the line. And we must be honest and say that things got so bad to the point where some businesses are looking to Maputo as an alternative because of the challenges. The good news is that we are extremely encouraged by the approach of Transnet. It's no longer a case of where Transnet operates in it distantly. We are working closely. We formed a steering committee, and we are determined to bring Transnet back to operational efficiency sooner rather than later. And I've got confidence that this will happen, that within a period of 12 to 18 months, we will see a different picture emerging. Of course, this is also linked to a 100 billion rand investment, which reorganizes the Durban port and to a certain extent the Richards Bay port. So we need to understand that and monitor it and track it. A new wild card post the floods, which then goes into the Durban South Basin, and you start talking about the extent to which Toyota was affected, and then they're raising the point that they're now becoming uninsurable if this is a new risk that comes out of climate change. So we have to respond to that as government. We are already committed to do so, and this weekend there will be a major meeting which hopefully we will be able to report on that thereafter. Climate change, of course, then takes us to environmental matters, and pages 40 and 41 sets out a range of work that we are doing and continuing to do, including on rhino poaching, which unfortunately I haven't much more time to do in detail, but perhaps we'll respond to it in the response time. This, of course, will include Kzn as an entity. I am disappointed that we're not able to announce the new board by now. It was really a disruption on some of the consultation processes that we have to engage in, but I think I can put my head on the block and say that within the next 2 weeks those announcements will in fact be made. On page 41 is a list of our entities and the amounts that are allocated to them. All of them are significant, but some of them are extremely strategic. The Dubai Trade Port, I think, is doing wonderful work. Kzn has a potential to be restored to its dual status, and I'm confident again, I think we will see significant difference within the next 12 to 18 months there as well. Some of these are subject to the rationalization process, which is underway, and of course, Itala becomes a key development financial institution. Honorable Chair, let me then try to wrap up and say that our province is a special province. We must not be under any illusion about that. We are special because of our people. We are special because of our history. But we are also special because of our strategic location. And we must not let anyone take that away from us. So let us defeat the narrative that seeks to define our province as unstable or lawless or backward. We are not. I think we have amongst our ranks the best that our nation has to offer. And we have to pull all these talents together, and I'm confident that we'll be able to rise to this challenge. In conclusion, I want to thank the Honorable Premier Zikalala for his continued support and guidance. I would also like to thank my esteemed colleagues in Cabinet, our social partners in the province for their continued support, resolve to see the entire KwaZulu-Natal being extracted from our current challenges. Let me also conclude by extending my humble gratitude to both my portfolio committees, the chairpersons and the members, as well as to the head of department and the entire senior management and the staff in general. Now is the time to change our fortunes. Now is the time to empower our people, and now is the time to rise above COVID-19, civil unrest, and the floods. It gives me honor to table the Department of Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs budget for consideration by this House, and it's set out there being a total of 3,412,995,000. I now move this budget in that amount for the 2022-23 financial year. Thank you, Honorable Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Honorable Premier. I'm sorry, but I'm not, maybe you're a premier. Honorable MSc, being promoted. Maybe it's the angels and gods. Then we are going to have the report by the Chairperson of Economic Development and Tourism, Honorable J.S. Ngumalo, for 10 minutes. Asibekele report.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson Manzini, honorable members of the executive present, honorable members of the legislature, heads of departments present, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Sanbonani, Molweni. Honorable Chairperson, allow me to table the 2022-2023 budget report on behalf of the Portfolio Committee on Economic Development and Tourism. We welcome this opportunity to participate in the budget debate for Vote 4. This budget report highlights recommendations, input, and concerns which arose during the budget hearings led by the Portfolio Committee to ensure robust oversight and enhance public participation over the budget process from the first draft to the final draft of the budget and annual performance plan, APP. Honorable Chairperson, as we were emerging from the disruptions of economic activities caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, which resulted in rising unemployment and deepened poverty, as our economy was on a recovery trajectory, our province had to endure second wave of interruptions to economic activities in a form of social unrest, which exacerbated these socio-economic challenges further. The continued economic recovery interventions and activities have now been threatened by the recent devastating floods, which have resulted in the loss of human life, destruction of key socio-economic infrastructure. This 2022-23 budget is being tabled and debated under these difficult times. However, response by private citizens, NGOs, businesses, and the classifications of these floods as national disaster has shown conviction to mobilize all resources and efforts to deal with the effects of this disaster effectively. Timely submission of quality report is fundamental to the budget process. Honorable Chairperson, the department complied with this imperative as it submitted both the 2022-23 first and final draft budget and APP timelessly. This enabled the Portfolio Committee to familiarize itself with this report prior to board meetings. In terms of quality, the department submission was of good quality and the format appears to comply with the standard reporting requirements. The committee undertook an extensive budget consideration process as it first met with the department on the 15th of December 2021 to engage on the 2022-23 draft budget and APP. Later on the same day, the Portfolio Committee facilitated stakeholders engagement where the department also presented and engaged stakeholders at Uvongo Community Hall on the budget and APP and projects specifically targeted for Ugu District. The committee also attended the Finance Committee budget hearings on the 5th of April 2022, where the department and its 12 entities presented their 2022-23 MTEF budgets. The final budget and APP was tabled to the Portfolio Committee first on the 22nd March 22 and also on the 13th of April 22, where extensive deliberations and production engagement were held. Honorable Chair, during the budget hearings held with the department reported that its total allocation for 2022-23 financial year is 3.4 billion. This committee exercises oversight of a program from 1 to 6 with a total budget of 2.265 billion in this financial year. The committee was pleased to learn that the budget shows year-on-year growth from 2022-23 onwards, however, nominal, and that the baseline has been restored to pre-COVID level. Breaking down the budget to the committee, the department reported that it has budgeted 467 million for integrated economic development services, 928 million for trade and investment initiatives, 195 million for business regulations and governance, 24 million for economic planning, and 300 million will be towards tourism planning, growth and development, and tourism sector transformation. The committee commends the department on the rollout of Operation Vula Fund program. While tabling the budget, the department reported that it has since disbursed 93% of 339 million, which is total rand value of approved beneficiaries. We note that the department is reviewing the guidelines in preparations for the opening of Window 2 and trust that the department is mindful of the Honorable Premier's commitment during SOPA when he said, I quote, "The department is committed to open the second window and ensure that funds are disbursed this year and to allocate at least 50% to women during this phase," close quote. Chairperson, on entities, the department reported that 2.251 billion or 66% of the total budget allocated to its 12 entities to further implement its mandate. This means that 2/3 of the budget is spent at entity level. Hence, the committee encourages the department to ensure that activities, project programs, and interventions implemented by the public entities closely align to its mandate, policies, priorities, and objectives. The department must put in place a comprehensive monitoring and evaluation mechanism to conduct robust and effective oversight over the public entities by utilizing tools such as service level agreements, SLA, in-year monitoring verification projects implemented, and tracking of outputs and outcomes. The committee wishes to emphasize to both the department and its entities that it is important that pipeline investor projects convert to operating businesses, engage in production, growing the economy, and creating real sustainable jobs. As mandated by Section 188 of the Constitution, the Portfolio Committee undertakes to stakeholders engagement meeting to meet the public and committee stakeholders where public is provided with an opportunity to raise concerns and also proposals on these strategic documents toward the betterment of the people of KZN. Honorable Chair, I am happy to report that targeted audience attended and provided quality input for the department to consider when crafting its plans, such as one, department was requested to consider offering basic accounting business services to small businesses owned by youth, women, and previously disadvantaged individuals who cannot afford services such as qualified auditors to help reduce cost of doing business in the province. The department was also requested to pay small businesses timelessly within 30 days for services rendered to the department, since small businesses depend on timeless payments for services rendered to keep afloat. Cooperatives in the area requested intensive training, access to funding, especially at Ithala Bank, and further suggested that industrial parks should be built in rural areas under traditional leaders to uplift SMMEs in rural areas and townships. Expensive rent in the CBD was cited as the hindrance to small businesses, and the department was requested to assist cooperatives and SMMEs by providing renting spaces at lower rates level in the CBD. Chairperson, concerns that were raised was that having considered the budget and APP presented by both the department and the entities, the committee noted the concern as follows. Small businesses have been widely accepted as the growth engine for developing and emerging economies, and the department did present initiatives to support both cooperatives and SMMEs. However, the committee raised concern that these input must produce real outputs and outcomes. The impact of these outcomes must make visible differences in communities. These interventions must translate to tangible results. Small businesses in rural and township must benefit and able to see these interventions in their communities. Having said that, in addition, as highlighted in the input by stakeholders, there is a general consensus when engagement communities that emerging businesses owned by youth and women are not getting necessary support from the department, especially when it comes to funding and support on innovations. Output by programs such as Black Industrialist Program should deliver tangible outputs such as qualitative changes in the structure of production while growing the economy and creating sustainable jobs. Having said that, Chairperson, the resolutions was that it considered Department 2022-2023 budget APP against relevant prescripts and national and provincial priorities informed by deliberations by committee and members voting as follows. Ngumalo, Fraser, Govender, Kunene, Pagati supported the budget. Honorable Dibur, there was no response, and therefore all committees members supported the budget. Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson. Siyabonga kakhulu.
Thank you, Honorable Kajo. On visual platform, I trust the Honorable Chairperson of Environmental Affairs is linked because we are now going to get a report from him. Honorable S.W. Mshengu for 10 minutes.
Yes, Chair, I am.
Thank you. Can proceed. Thank you, Honorable Chair of Environmental Affairs. We now get into the debate. The first orator is from the ANC. It will be Honorable N.N. Sibidla for 10 minutes.
Honorable Chairperson, members of the Executive Council present in the House, honorable members, HOD and CFO of ETIA, invited guests of the Speaker, good afternoon. Honorable Chairperson, allow me to remind this August House of the reality of the South African economy as captured in the ANC's 1994 RDP document, and it reads, I quote, "No political democracy can survive and flourish if the mass of our people remain in poverty, without land, without tangible prospect for a better life. Attacking poverty and deprivation must therefore be the first priority of a democratic government," close quote. Honorable Chairperson, it is a matter of considerable pride that despite enormous challenges, this ANC government has steadily made progress towards bringing the economically marginalized sectors of our society into the mainstream economy. The MEC has clearly and sufficiently dealt with the impact of COVID and the recent devastating floods on small businesses. I will not waste your time except to acknowledge the interventions that the MEC has outlined in his speech, hoping that MEC, these interventions, as you outlined in your speech and during our engagements in the committee, are not going to take long to get to the beneficiaries or the people that need that assistance, as we experienced during the COVID and the July unrest interventions. Honorable MEC, we welcome your pronouncement on Operation Vula. This police, Operation Vula, which was conceived to support business operations that promise to survive in the highly competitive business environment, is a case in point. Honorable MEC, we also welcome the allocation of about 69 million, or just over 69 million, that is allocated towards this program. Although this amount is not enough, but we do understand the challenges that the department is confronted with in terms of dispersing this allocation. We are hoping that the information that we received from the officials in terms of the plan to disperse this fund in the next financial year will ensure an increase in this amount. This is an intervention, Honorable MEC, Honorable Chairperson, that speaks to the genesis of radical economic transformation policy that seeks to equate economic growth with active participation of Black people in the country's economy in terms of ownership, management, and control. About 56 sectors of the economy were identified as potential vehicles to accelerate socio-economic transformation in the province. These sectors, Honorable Chairperson, include, amongst many, agriculture, bakeries, clothing and textile, and many others. These were tipped to draw more Africans into the mainstream economy, where government departments at all levels serve as primary market for emerging Black enterprises. Honorable Chairperson, as the African National Congress, we are pleased with the work done by the department to ensure that all beneficiaries of Operation Vula Fund get what is due to them so that they can start working on their dreams. As we speak today, I am happy to report to the nation that out of 1,016 approved beneficiaries, the department has managed to disperse 949, which amounts or equates to 93%, 93.5 of the total number. Honorable MEC, we are told that there are challenges of capacity in the unit that is responsible for this fund. We implore you, MEC, to address this issue so that we do not experience the delays in the second phase. The delays that were experienced in the first phase were very frustrating, not only to the beneficiaries, but also to the portfolio committee members. Besingalali, Honorable MEC, people who were calling us daily, inquiring about the progress in their applications. Honorable MEC, during our engagements on this particular or specific program, you will recall that I raised my dissatisfaction regarding the allocation towards women. It doesn't reflect the correct numbers in terms of the demographics. I hope in the second term, Honorable MEC, this matter will be addressed when we allocating for the second phase. Sihlalo sinxusa umnyango ngaphansi kohlelo lwe-Operation Vula Fund ukuthi benze isiqinisekiso sokuthi ku-phase 2 abantu besifazane bathola ngaphezulu kuka-50%. Njengoba sazi ukuthi izibalo zikhombisa ukuthi abesifazane baningi ukudlula abesilisa kuleli lizwe. Sicela nakumphathiswa ukuthi ingqinamba ezibe khona ezifana nokushoda kwabasebenzi ngaphansi kwale program kufanele zixazululwe ngokukhulu ukusheshsha ukwenzela ukuthi kungalibaziseki ukukhishwa kwemali eya kulabo abazobe bephumelele. Okunye sikutholayo ukuthi labo abangaphumelelanga, Honorable MEC, baye bangasizwa kahle ukuthi bathole izizathu zokuthi yindaba bangakwazanga ukuphumelela. Ngakho ke siyanxusa ukuthi umnyango usebenze ngokukhulu usebenze kakhulu ukuthi wenze isiqinisekiso sokuthi labo abangaphumelelanga bayithola isupport ukwenzela ukuthi bakwazi ukulungisa amaphutha wabo ukwenzela ukuthi bakwazi ukungena kuhlelo olulandelayo. Honorable MEC, Honorable Chairperson, the ANC in one of its mahutlas resolved that for land reform to be successful, the agrarian structure of our economy must also change. The current structure excludes the majority of small-scale farmers, especially in the beef, maize, and bean sectors here in KwaZulu-Natal. These sectors are dominated by few large-scale farmers who dominate the whole agriculture value chain. The provincial government initiated in response a RASET program which is geared towards promoting market access for small-scale farmers. Honorable Chairperson, it has been proven that small-scale farmers are the drivers of agricultural economy, even though they are confronted by a number of challenges that undermine their potential. According to the National Development Plan, rural economies will be supported by agriculture and, where possible, mining, tourism, agro-processing, and fisheries. Agriculture sector has been identified as a primary economic activity in rural areas, with a potential of creating close to 1 million jobs by year 2030. Since its inception, RASET has been able to secure 3 government markets in the departments of education, social development, and health. The program has also managed to secure 24 markets in the private sector here in KwaZulu-Natal. In Dugu alone, we are told that 200 farmers that were assisted with market access successfully sold their produce to National School Nutrition Program to the tune of about 4 million. Kunyaka wesabelo zimali ka 2019-2020 abalimi abangu 1,200 ikakhulukazi labo esibabiza phecelezi historically disadvantaged individuals bathengisa umkhiqizo wabo bazuza imali engaphezulu kuka 52 million ngonyaka. Ngonyaka ka 2021-2022 abalimi abangu 680 benza inzuzo ka 31 million. Kwadaleka namathuba emisebenzi angaphezulu kuka 500. Siyaluhalalisa, siyalijabulela kakhulu ke bahlonishwa and Honorable MEC lolu hlelo lokuxhasa ngaphansi kuka RASET ngama trucks angama 8 tons alapha kuma district ikakhulukazi ngoba izonciphisa izindleko ze transport kubalimi okuyiyona into abahlala bekhala ngayo kakhulu uma sixhumana nabo. Honorable Chairperson, the recent floods in our province affected quite a number of RASET beneficiaries. Some lost hectares of farmland, others their stock was washed away, and many could not reach their produce that was ready for markets due to damages on their road infrastructure. Iningi ke lalaba ilaba balimi abangenayo insurance. Siyanxusa kuhulumeni ukuthi ungathathi isikhathi eside ukuletha izibonelelo ngoba uma wenza njalo kungase kube nomthelela omubi kulama business bazithole sebe lahlekelwe zimarket nokunye okuningi. Honorable Chairperson, the ANC umbutho wesizwe supports the budget as tabled by the MEC.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is from IFP, Honorable P. Govender, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Greetings to the Honorable MEC, and all honorable members present in the House and those on the virtual platform. Honorable Chairperson, over the past year, the economic trajectory of our province has been dealt severe setbacks in the form of the COVID-19 pandemic, the looting accompanied by social unrest, and the devastating storm that lashed our province. If ever was a time for government to be creative and focused on economic development, this is the time. Whilst large companies might find it easy to get back on their feet and continue to function, my thoughts are with the smaller players in the economic sector, especially those in the township economies across KwaZulu-Natal. These traders were not covered by insurance, nor do they have the resources to get restarted and end the living. This is where I believe that this department has a meaningful role to play, and this must be an edge role taken by the department. Honorable Chairperson, in Program 2, the department's red tape reduction program must be urgently rolled out and implemented. In previous debates, I always championed the cause for red tape reduction so that investors will be encouraged to set up businesses in small municipalities thereby create needed jobs in the rural areas. In municipalities under the control of the IFP in KwaZulu-Natal will welcome this program, and I want to appeal to the Honorable MEC to prioritize more than just the 7 municipalities as projected in the department's APP target. Under Program 4, which deals with business regulations and governance, I welcome the department's intention to provide technical support to 41 municipalities that will be assisted with business licensing issues. The township economies need to be revitalized and given much needed boost, and this will serve to create jobs as well as promote tourism in those rural areas. Honorable Chairperson, on the issue of tourism, I am very concerned that in Program 6, which deals with tourism, there are 22 vacant posts. Such a vital program certainly cannot function optimally and deliver on its mandate if its organogram is so deleted. While we were on the oversight list to areas affected by the social unrest, I was dismayed to see Itala properties that have been badly neglected in terms of maintenance and security. Those buildings house many factories providing hundreds of sustainable jobs, but the state of neglect is very concerning. I am aware that 160 million rand was set aside for this purpose before the unrest. I hope that the department will ensure that this issue will be back on track. Whilst the department must be commended for wanting to support various enterprises, it is disheartening that the loans given by the Kzn Budget Trust Fund to companies such as Good Life, FDMSA, INSA, and Microfinish to the tune of over 184.7 million rand have not provided the desired outcomes. Some of these companies are dysfunctional, with problems ranging from infighting among shareholders to a company that was given a loan of 19 million rand, but they then provided invoices from dubious suppliers, forcing the trust fund to go to court in the hope of recovering about 12.2 million rand. As a province, we cannot afford to lose these much needed funds. I am very concerned about the plight of young students who were enrolled to study at the Sharp School of Excellence. These students were paid thousands of francs to study in the hope of graduating and getting employment. I met with these students and was told very sad stories of how they were hoodwinked. Some of them attended graduation ceremonies and received what was to be certificates of diplomas, but those documents were not worth the paper that they were printed on. I want to urge the department to ensure that these students are compensated in some way because they have lost over 4 to 5 years of their lives, whilst somebody at the Sharp School took their money and were not able to give them the qualifications that they require. Honourable Chairperson, I conclude on a high note, and I say high note, by stating that the progress being made and opportunities being presented in the cannabis industry is very encouraging going forward. Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. From DA, Honourable H.U. Debo for 12 minutes.
I know my story indeed. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Honourable MEC, Honourable Chairperson. Thank you for affording me this opportunity. First of all, before I start the speech, I'd like to dedicate this particular political conversation that we are having to the people of Ukraine who are suffering and dying at the hands of the Russian aggressors. And we all know that certain members of this House here support this Russian aggression. Madam Chairperson, please allow me to preface this debate by declaring that I do not have a water tanker parked outside my home. Unlike other honourable members, we don't pretend to be a leader of the people, but rather for the people of this province. We won't mention who that honourable member is, as the member's not here today. I think before we start debating anything else, we need to preface this debate with a discussion about Kzn Budget wildlife and the rhino poaching, as you have mentioned, Honourable MEC. Madam Chair, perhaps the biggest disgrace of this entity is its complete inability of Kzn Budget Wildlife to fulfill its core mandate. As of the beginning of May, more than 100 critically endangered rhino have been slaughtered in our parks. The poachers are now turning to the private game reserves and the private game parks. Honourable MEC, I didn't want to stop you earlier when you made your presentation, but your figures that are contained within your report are incorrect. There was not 35 rhinos that were poached in the last financial year. There was 102 that were poached and 102 that were poached in the year before. The Kzn Budget website clearly shows those figures. Our province is under attack, Madam Chair, and this government seems unable to stem the tide. Despite the best efforts of our dedicated rangers, whom for years have languished under a cloud of bad uniforms, a lack of weapons, and slashed anti-poaching budgets, this provincial executive has fundamentally failed in its duties. The 854 million rand subsidy to Kzn Budget simply does not empower Kzn Budget to get boots on the ground and take down the poachers. We are at war in our Kzn Budget parks. Yet our anti-poaching task team budget stopped in the 2019 financial year. And so dismal is this year's budget that we are simply just trying to meet mandates in a crumbling entity and not trying to exceed any expectations. Helicopter operation budgets are largely spent on chasing elephant and wild dog back into the parks, while private sector offers to help have been simply dismissed out of hand. Assault rifles have been stolen from rangers' vehicles. Corrupt staff plague the entity, and communities are so fed up with Kzn Budget's empty promises of help that they actively collaborate with poaching syndicates. And this is contained within reports. This is not populist rhetoric. This is contained within reports that come from the parks and from Kzn Budget. Critically, employing additional rangers seems impossible, with ETIA admitting no vacant posts will be filled due to budgetary constraints. This simply cannot be allowed to go unchallenged. Again, the Democratic Alliance has made several proposals, all of which have been largely ignored. That includes the formation of a cohesive and permanent anti-poaching task team, coupled with specialist prosecutors and courts to stamp out poaching. That is now imperative. Internal Ezemvelo poaching operations can easily be funded by an exponential increase in sustainable wildlife auctions and hunting packages, and we are pleased that that is on the agenda. Of course, Ezemvelo is certainly not helped when the Premier's office refuses to release the report into rhino poaching in KZN years after its completion. This fundamental failure is a slap in the face to the many dedicated conservationists who have nurtured the species back from the brink of extinction. The Premier's office is hiding this report, and even a PIA application has not brought it to light yet. This cauldron of ineptitude, linked with the lack of proper political will to fundamentally transform Ezemvelo, will lead to the end of our rhino. The extinction of a species will be remembered in history as another ANC failure. Your budgets and your leadership will be held accountable for generations to come. Madam Chair, to address the proposed 2022-2023 budget in its entirety remains impossible. Fortunately, again, ETIA's budget seems to be largely a copy and paste exercise from the preceding years, with much fanfare and catchphrases, really with no good outcomes at the end of the day. And I look back at the speech that was given by the Honourable MEC and all the various programs, and I think to myself, well, if that was true, if all of this money is going out into communities and so many jobs are being created, why does unemployment spike in KZN? It simply doesn't make sense, certainly not politically. Whereas the Honourable Duma and the more radical amongst the ANC will no doubt attempt to lay the blame for this province's terrible economic outlook at the feet of Jan van Riebeeck, the public is not so easily fooled anymore. Ordinary citizens across the colour line and diverse economic backgrounds have given the ANC a proper hiding in the 2021 elections. So much so that the ANC technically no longer governs this province, with most municipalities now being governed by the IFP or in coalition with other parties. It's a pity the IFP governs so badly in some of those municipalities and also agrees with the ANC in this House on every single vote. Given this bleak outlook, one would expect some serious introspection and a change in course in both political stance and by its very nature, provincial budgets. Sadly, the ANC has stumbled from one bloody nose to the next and now faces the greatest enemy of all, and that, Honourable Chair, is investor confidence. And I'm glad, Honourable MEC, that you have touched on that. The 2021 July riots, an attempted insurrection by ANC factions, nobody else except ANC factions, aided by unscrupulous criminals, was a clear message to business in KZN. A message that the ANC only cares about Jacob Zuma and keeping Jacob Zuma out of jail. Honourable MEC, nobody can claim otherwise. This was an insurrection and it came from the ranks of the ANC. Some honourable members of this very House even were on the streets of Nkandla dancing and toy-toying and in support of Jacob Zuma, and days later we had an insurrection within South Africa. What does that tell you? It tells you that we need a fundamental political change within the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Once the die was cast, the ANC government then made an attempt to stop the violence. MEC, we thank you for your efforts, but you deployed an ineffective SANDF who cruised around in armored vehicles that are more than 30 years old apartheid equipment that they used to use against you in the border wars, while local communities fed the soldiers. And there is evidence of that. Madam Speaker, Madam Chair, let me put the ANC-led July insurrection into context. Civilian casualties in Ukraine were less in the first 3 days of the Russian invasion than the entire insurrection. Well done, ANC. You actually beat a world power at something. Unfortunately, it's the wrong thing. This should raise a clear warning that we are half a step away from another bout of violence. Provincial budgets now need to make a deep and impactful difference to society. Real change is needed. One must first go back to the beginning of the sorry saga of ANC rule to really delve into the budgets. The very basics of economic development are largely ignored each financial year. Whatever happened to the Back to Basics program? One can only surmise it was relegated to file 13 when the basics were pilfered by unscrupulous cadres. Please allow me to make a few suggestions. A strong transport network linking markets and manufacturing spheres is vital, yet it remains largely unfulfilled within KZN. Water and electricity provision, particularly in rural areas, areas like in Kandla, that is my constituency, Honourable MEC, where jobs should be created, is largely non-existent. Our provincial budgets must start moving away from supporting largely urban and peri-urban areas and moving into deep rural areas where there is a dire need to create jobs. The ANC, of course, has had its race-based criteria for supporting tourism businesses, and if you didn't comply with certain BEE principles, you didn't get help. So as COVID kicked the economy in the teeth, the ANC then said to certain businesses, sorry, you can't get any help. Detailed private sector studies giving relatively simple solutions to unblock the Durban port and the various transport routes around the Durban port have largely been ignored. It is so bad now, it is so bad that certain vessels from certain shipping companies are simply sailing past the port of Durban. And there is also evidence of that. And then finally, securing and policing our commercial and residential areas must be a priority to build prosperity. Yet after 28 years, this ANC government has, by its inaction, allowed thieves to literally steal the cables, the railway tracks, set fire to certain components within the ports, the copper wires and the road railings, all of which are clandestinely destined for its struggle friend China. And a word of advice to the House. Just because China gave the ANC some AK-47s during the struggle, it should not equate to our economy being sold out from underneath us to foreign governments at the expense of our citizens. The ANC's foreign policy and its impact on investor confidence is another great cause for concern. Our Honourable President is torn between the RET revolutionaries and sound governmental principles. The same can be said for the Honourable Premier, who seems to sway with the political wind generated from within his own ranks. We all know what happens to people who sit on barbed wire fences. We as South Africa did not even have the humanity to condemn Russia on an international platform for its acts of aggression. Yet we are hosting 10,000 delegates from the United Nations, but we didn't have the common decency to condemn the Russian aggression in Ukraine. And look at what's happening now. People within South Africa might even start paying an additional 3 rand per litre for fuel. Our food prices are skyrocketing. Yet we as a government, well, not we as a government, the ANC government, has failed to condemn this aggression. And in doing so, you have made us the pariah of the international community. The ANC has embarrassed us. You have chased investors from the shores of South Africa, and certainly the investment that has been mentioned is not good enough. In closing, as of course we don't always have time to always say what we want to, I want to say that some of the saddest times that we've had as a committee, particularly in the Economic Development Committee, was to see the devastation that was caused by the riots. We will never forget the old Gogo who was sitting on a crate outside Newcastle. The Honourable Chair was there, crying because her business had been completely destroyed. And we now need to look at what are the causes and effects of that destruction. And at the end of the day, we know what the main cause is. The cause is the ANC, and we hope that voters will certainly vote you out in the next election. Thank you, Honourable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Next, on the debate, I think he is linked virtually from EFF, Honourable Edgy Seja, for 9 minutes.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Greetings to honourable members, greetings to the department. Honourable Speaker, the debate today could not have come at a crucial time for South Africa, but most specifically for KwaZulu-Natal. Allow me this opportunity to demonstrate that the proposed budget failed to understand the importance of the moment, but also exposes what we have always said as the EFF, that the real matter.
Excuse me, Honourable Member. Honourable Seja. Can we see you? We don't see you. I'm not so sure whether you have tried to appear on the screen. Yes, thank you. Yes, Yebo, can proceed. Yes, we did. Yes. Yes, we heard you. Proceed then.
Allow me this opportunity to demonstrate that the proposed budget fails to understand the importance of the moment, but also exposes what we have always said as DFF, that the ruling party of Natal has failed to understand its role in the economy. Firstly, COVID-19 pandemic showed all of us that the provincial government has an important role to play if we are going to ensure that we grow the economy, not only as a consumer but also as a strategic partner that should lead industrialization in the province. Secondly, the July 2021 unrest proved that unless we address socio-economic challenges facing our people, it is easy for this province to descend into crisis. What we saw in the streets of Durban, in Umla's City, Central Durban, and in Phoenix, Pinetown, and many other areas will easily become a frequent occurrence. We do not say this because we want to incite violence, but unless our people have jobs, have food on the table, have electricity and water, they will just repeat the sense of July 2021. Lastly, the floods that killed many and left many households without homes and breadwinners. All this happened in a space of 2 years and should have sent a clear message to the ruling party and the business community, including the tourism sector, that has suffered the most. It is therefore clear that this budget is not only misguided but out of touch with reality. This is not the time to repeat allocations with 2, 3, or 4% growth like it is business as usual. This is the time to change everything starting from the top if we are going to revive manufacturing to contribute more than 50% to the provincial GDP. This is the time to do things differently, to grow jobs on the top beyond slots. We are dealing with the issue of finance. The province employment rate is too low. We cannot continue to have almost 60% of young people between the age of 15 and 34 years unemployed. The provincial government cannot continue to outsource the responsibility to create jobs to the private sector. Mr. Sudan, of course, I can say that it is not the responsibility of the government to create jobs, but we must make it our business to create jobs for our people. We must make it our business to rebuild damaged infrastructure and use the opportunity to install and build provincial government capacity. If we continue to outsource the private sector and continue to prioritize profit over development and jobs, we must make it our business to build capacity in municipalities to leverage on conditional grants. In KwaZulu-Natal, all municipalities must have clear plans to combine conditional grants, economic development, and job creation. The so-called macroeconomic packages that the provincial government is signing with municipalities must have a clear strategy on how to exploit conditional grants. We must make it our business to refocus the province on agro-processing
Thank you, Honorable Member. From ANC, Honorable T.S. Njali for 11 minutes. Honorable Member.
Thanks, Honorable Chair, Honorable Speaker and the Deputy Speaker, Honorable Premier Kzn, members of the Executive, members of this august House, our guest, Abasilalele and Abasibukayo Makaya, please receive my greetings. It has been always an assertion of the African National Congress, Honorable MEC, that not only are we going to liberate those that were oppressed by apartheid, but we also affirm that we'll also liberate the oppressor. And I think it's what we must do to one honorable fellow who was here. He requires a serious assistance in terms of also liberating him from chains that is being subjected to, and I understand that it's not his fault. It's an environment of his upbringing, what was told, but we'll assist him gradually. Let me start by sending my condolences to all the families that have lost their loved ones as the results of floods that emanate from this recent storm that we've experienced within our province. We ask God to be with them during these difficult times. We must thank our provincial government led by the Premier Kzn for ensuring that during these difficult times, you were with the people providing the necessary support that they needed. Obviously, those that come here and grandstand, they were not with you. No, we have seen some with their familiar faces being on the ground during these difficult times. They did not come to cross the rivers with you, but they will come here and claim to be representing you. They did not come to your families and to your houses because where you stay, it's not an area that is suitable for their feet, but we're with you through the ANC-led government. I'm saying this, Honorable MEC, with a clear understanding that the difficult times, it's still going to last. Our people are still asking themselves what tomorrow holds for them. They have been affected by this in many ways. But through the joint work and the commitment that has been shown by the leadership of our government, working with our people in trying to ensure that whatever the necessary help is provided to them. Nor have we told any lies to say that everything will change overnight, but it's a work that we must take in ensuring that we restore what we have lost during these difficult times. While ezemvelo boast natural beauty at their various destination reserves, there is a need to maintain and modernize infrastructure and intensify investment on the infrastructure as an important drive for improving the tourism sector. It cannot be overemphasized, Honorable MEC. However, ezemvelo tourism income may not be sufficient to fund all infrastructure initiatives, and as a result, might require additional funding assistance from government or explore corporate financing. Honorable Chairperson, we have observed the instability within ezemvelo, and we have been upfront with it. We have not turned on the other side. We've confronted it through our portfolio committee because we believe that there should be change that is implemented there. Hence, we want to urge the MEC, and we're happy that within 2 weeks, the MEC has indicated that the announcement of the new board will be made and would hold you to that commitment, Honorable MEC. To the new board, we are hoping that you would be able to, first of all, we must warn you not to fall to the same trap of what transpired with the previous board. but also look up to you to change and hold the institution to its stability, ensure that you instill new ideas and innovation that will seek to address all the challenges that they are currently facing. You must ensure that Kzn become the tourist destination again for many of our people in order for it to regain revenue generation so that it can be able to be self-sustainable. As portfolio committee members, we will be looking up to them to turn around the institution, especially strategically locate more funding for infrastructure development. Obviously, Honorable MEC, with regards to the budget constraints and the imbalances that exist within Kzn, it must be noted that more than 75% of Kzn budget goes towards the compensation of employees. This results in very little funding or money that remains for actual work on the ground. Therefore, the new board, amongst other things, as well as the management, has a responsibility to address this anomaly in ensuring that that changes for the better, so that we have more money that seeks to address directly the issue of, amongst other things, infrastructure development, and ensure that the practical work on the ground does have the necessary funds for it. With regards, Honorable MEC, of ecotourism, we'll agree with you that throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, it has really impacted the entire tourism sector. Therefore, Kzn ecotourism is not immune into this. This requires a relook into the business model, and this must be looked in the close lens with the infrastructure that need improvements. Our infrastructure should be conducive, and it should be conducive enough that is acceptable by our visitors. For if you do not have a proper infrastructure, how do you call yourself a destination for tourism without having the proper conducive environment that allows you to attract more guests within your institution? We are happy, Honorable MEC, with regards to the community beneficiation, in particular understanding that effective management of our natural capital is a key requirement for sustainable economic development and job creation. This can't be done outside the people, such that the relationship with the communities who are within these areas do benefit. As a result, Honorable MEC, we are happy and we are going to confirm and respond on behalf to a question that was raised. If we are creating jobs, why the number of unemployed still exists? As a result, there were about 3,153 temporary jobs that were created and 66 permanent ones. 65% of which it was the youth, and we're happy about it, Honorable MEC, and 55% was women, while 2% was for people living with disability. We are a people-centered government, and our policies are driven by the aim of changing the lives of our people. Honorable Chair, the Honorable MEC on his speech, probably because it could be that some of us were not able to grasp some of the things and listening attentively on what he was saying. He indicated that in terms of rhino poaching, we had a setback, and that confirmed that despite the number of rangers that could have been added or that are being added, it's an area that we still need to improve. So he did not shy away from it and came here and only spoke about the achievements within that sector, which we're happy about it, Honorable MEC, and we accept that we need to improve on that. Let me also conclude by saying, Honorable Chair, and quote former President Thabo Mbeki when he said, and I quote, "Our nights cannot but be nights of nightmares while millions of our people live in conditions of degrading poverty," close quote. I'm raising this, Honorable Chair, with a clear understanding to our people that we fully understand what you are going through. Policies that are created by the African National Congress seeks to change the lives of our people. Nor have we will ever come to you and lie and say that we will do things that we know exactly that we cannot do. Being clear in terms of the approach and the policies that we are creating to change the lives of our people. We are saying to you, our nights cannot but be nights of nightmares, while we know for a fact that millions of our people live in conditions of degrading poverty. With that being said, Honorable MEC, we do want to say, under these very difficult times, to change the economy of our province, facing all the challenges that our government has faced, you've still stood the test of time led by our Premier. You've still been with our people. You've still provided solutions. You've still provided help. No one will stand up and shout and say, where was the government? Because we're with them. We're with them when we're fighting to liberate them. We're with them when we are fighting to ensure that we get them out of poverty. We're with them when they are facing storms. We're with them when they lose their loved ones. Therefore, we have no shame to say, as we walk this journey, we will continue to be with you for the path and the work and the fight that we started by the African National Congress will never end until the time that we've completely taken you out of poverty. It will never end until the time that our economy benefits our people, not just a few. I thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next will be from the NFP. Honorable C.M. Shinga, for 3 minutes.
Hayibo, hayibo sihlalo. Hayibo, you got it wrong. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chair, and Honorable Members. We believe this budget pursues to support and promote local economic development and growth in local small-scale industries through its programs like Operation Vula Fund and Radical and Rasset, with the aim to promote the economy and creating more job opportunities in the province. The NFP is pleased and encouraged of the view that the department has provided support and funding to a total of 1,505 financially viable enterprises through training, mentorship, marketing, business advisory services, business registrations, 260 SMMEs and 26 cooperatives and exhibitions and master classes. However, we think it is paramount that the department continues its relationship with the business advisory support to the funded enterprises to help bring a strong business foundation and financial stability and smooth running operations. This will contribute towards improving our economic development and growth and further alleviate poverty and unemployment. Honorable Speaker, we are worried about the 62.730 million, 44.609 million, 182.796 million cut over MTEF 2021-2022 against Program 7 in respect of goods and services. These significant budget cuts adversely impact on the quality of advertising, communication, contractors' costs, consultants, etc. We are also concerned and skeptical about the budget cuts on grant funding like the Dube Trade Port Corporation, as this undermines the aim to support and procure funding to the KZN business community. Furthermore, we are worried about the failure and inability of the Tourism KZN to fully spend and utilize the funds. Honorable MEC, we appeal to the department to accelerate the Moses Kotane Institute establishment of information, communication, and technology hubs to enable access of information and infrastructure for skills development in preparation for the most talked about 4IR, and also to fast-track the rollout of the broadband project in accordance to the need of connectivity, innovation, and research with the aim to capacitate and prepare the youth for the 4IR digital economy. Ngalawo mazwi siya supporta umsebenzi we department. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable OP Gunene, given 5 minutes from the IFP. Tululeki Ihlombe Shinga. Becelile uShinga Ihlombe. Demande.
The Honorable
Tipu.
The Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Leader of the Official Opposition, the Honorable MEC, Honorable Members, the HOD and Senior Managers present. It is my pleasure to represent my party, the IFP, in this debate. It is interesting that the Honorable Tepur assesses the performance of the IFP after merely 4 months in office. You need to go to the Western Cape to ask the people of Khayelitsha about how the DA governs. And then you will know the true facts of how the DA governs. The IFP will not oppose for the sake of opposing. We will commend the government when it does well, much to the chagrin of the honorable deputies of this world. We do not shy away from criticizing the government when it is necessary to do so. It is so unfortunate that in his pursuit for recognition and promotion within the DA, Honorable Deputy chooses to direct his vitriol to the IFP. The Honorable Deputy must know that as much as we don't tell him how to debate, he must not tell us how to debate. If the DA was an effective opposition party, the voters of this province would have returned it into being an official opposition. But instead, they were voted out of this position. During the local government elections, they did not do even better, that you could say it justifies the empty noise that the Honorable Deputy has just made. We're concerned about the unemployment in KwaZulu-Natal province, Honorable MEC. The Stats SA report reported that at the unemployment figure in the last quarter of 2021, that's the fourth quarter, youth unemployment in this province stood at around 60%. The recent catastrophic floods has just added a new hard blow to the tourism, agriculture, logistics, and manufacturing sectors' jobs. These sectors were still trying to find their feet after the 2021 July unrest effect of the violence that took place there and the looting that happened. And that cost the province about 20 billion rand in lost business. The 2022-23 budget, we are concerned about the effect of cuts on the budget in terms of the programs that the department will implement. The IFP notes that in the 2022-23 MTF, no changes are made to the budget department's equitable share that is budgeted. We say it should be carefully used to implement the various programs that this department should implement. We call upon the Honorable MEC to ensure that the business inspections program is implemented in full throughout this province. We urge the government to enforce labor market policy which prioritizes South Africans but does not discriminate against foreign nationals. We have noted that a large part of this budget is allocated to entities. We call upon the entities, the boards and the accounting officers of those entities to utilize these budgets effectively. We are concerned about the vacant posts in the department because the delay in filling vacant posts actually impacts negatively on service delivery. Honorable MEC, we're concerned about the issue of rural communities. We call upon you, Honorable MEC, to see how rural communities can be assisted. And lastly, the IFP is deeply concerned about the plight of street traders in different towns and cities of our provinces, who find it difficult to conduct informal trade because of harassment they come across in towns and cities they are trading in. We wish the department could engage structures of local government in order to ensure that the informal traders are able to ply their trade without any harassment or hindrance from authorities. The Honorable Chairperson, the IFP supports the budget. However, we call for the careful spending of a proper utilization of this budget. The IFP confirms that it will exercise its oversight role to monitor the implementation of the APP of this department and its budget. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Our next debater is on virtual. I think it's from the MF Minority Front. Honorable S. Thakur Rajbansi for 3 minutes.
Report. From 2014, there has been a trend in this department to have shifts in functions from into other departments. Yet the concern will always be the lack of transparency that has stricken him. Due to our economic crisis, the department is trying to make programs accessible and transparent. Then we have mafias that have mushroomed because they cannot hold government to ransom anymore. It is important to go back to pre-2014, when SA invited multi-party representatives and tourism conferences. Currently, the only real business records and rather than as the government policy follows. This committee is not rubber stamping a livelihood. This is a participatory democracy. This is also partly the reason why the Growth Fund has non-performing loans, why small businesses At parents say this morning, I met a lady who recycles tire drums and rims, all beads, etc. To networks, even the electricity authority. Some women deserve access to funding. Honorable MEC, apart from bottled water, give poor households a small gas tank and a 2-plate gas stove. The airman welcomes the halal food value chain. But what we would like, Honorable MEC, is for this to be extended to all faith-based groups to create jobs and to ensure food security and build our communities through CSR projects. Of concern is the sponsorships engaging in nefarious money laundering activities, and these must be investigated, monitored, and closed. In conservation, the budget is usually underspent, yet proper planning is required to respond to climate change, and the baseline should be doubled with a bulk given to Kzn Budget. We have economic and job opportunities presented by Mother Nature to improve soil and water conservation, invest in carbon sequestration activities, remove alien plants, and grow indigenous trees. Honorable Member, climate change must become a part of the agenda. Then we will move. Honorable MEC, the aftermath of the July looting left many businesses in distress. Please accelerate financing through Operation Bula. To all businesses, and I would like to see phase 2 efforts in all papers to bring awareness if there's departmental capacity weaknesses. The UPR massive closure. This company cannot be economically punished because the looters should be. This Honorable House would like to hear the government's decision. Kzn, with all its political instability, worsened by COVID-19 and floods, cannot change the way businesses that are business to the energy, health, and food sectors. The MF supports this 3.4 billion budget for the 2022-2023 year, but we remind, please spend taxpayers' money.
Your time is up, Honorable Member. Thank you. From the ANC, you are going to have again Honorable N.N. Spidla for 10 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Members of the August House, Honorable MEC, RR Pillay, HOD, Mr. Nkontwana, and CFO, Mr. Mthethwa. I also want to greet the guests of the speaker and those of the MEC that are seated in the galleries. Honorable Chairperson, let me at the outset report that the ANC supports this budget in case I run out of time. Thank you, Mdimande. You have dealt with Honorable Deboer's issues adequately, so I will not waste time. I know him as a man of integrity, but I always get disappointed when you stand before the cameras and microphones. From time to time, you represent a character that I don't know about you. Honorable Chairperson, ndime apha ngaphambili nje inhliziyo yami ibuhlungu. Lo mba esizothetha ngawo apha undikhumbuza iziganeko zakamva nje. Apho iphondo lethu belihlaselwe zizikhukhula ezimke nemiphefumlo emininzi zadala nomonakalo omkhulu kwiziseko zophuhliso. Ezi zikhukhula zibangele ukuphazamiseka okukhulu ebomini nakwimpilo yephondo lethu. Sithanda ukudlulisa amazwi ovelwano kubo bonke abo baphulukene nezihlobo zabo. Siphinde kwakhona siqinise idolo kulabo abasakhangela izihlobo zabo ezilahlekileyo ngexesha lezi zikhukhula. Honorable Chairperson, on the 30th of July 2019, I stood in this podium and reminded our communities about global warming or climate change and its impact on the environment. I went further, Honorable Chairperson, and shared information from experts in the field. Lapho babesixwayisa khona ngempembelelo zokunyuka kwamazinga obushushu emhlabeni jikelele. Lokho okwenzeke lapha kulesi sifundazwe sakithi kusikhombisa ngokusobala ukuthi ukuguquguquka kwesimo sezulu akuseyona nje indaba exoxwayo ukuthi iyeza, kepha silapho sesizwa imphumela yako. Konke lokho nina bohlanga kusho ukuthi umuntu nomuntu unoxanduva noma unendima ekufanele ayidlale uqinisekisa ukuthi siyashintsha indlela yokuziphatha nendlela esebenzisana ngayo nemvelo. Sihlalo wendlu ehloniphekileyo, abezimo zezulu basitshela ukuthi lesi sifundazwe sethu sisengcupheni yokuthi sivakashelwe izimvula ezinkulu esikhathini esizayo. Ngakho ke kuzobaleka ngempela ukuthi abantu bakithi babe sesimeni esikulungele ukuthi uma kwenzeka sifika leso sikhathi bakulungele ukubhekana naso ukuze kuvimbeke ukuhamba kwemphefumulo kanye nokulimala kwengqalasizinda. Sihlalo lezi zikhukhula azithathanga nje imphefumulo yabantu kuphela kodwa zigugulise nalokho kungamagugu kithi njengabantu balesi sifundazwe saKwaZulu Natal. Izihlahla, izilwane ezingamagugu nazo ziye zathinteka kakhulu. Imfula eminingi iye yangcoliseka, imfucuza ibisuka emizini nasezindaweni zokugcina yona imfucuza qobo. Sihlalo ikomiti lokunakekelwa kwezemvelo liye lavakashela indawo lapho kulahlwa khona imfucuza ukuyobheka umonakalo khona njengoba sasithole ukuthi kwezinye izindawo akungeneki ngenxa yemigwaqo yayigugulisekile okwakwenza kube nzima ukuthi amathilagi emfucuza akwazi ukungena. Honorable Chairperson, sasingaqali ukuvakashela lezi ndawo, sike saya nakwezinye izindawo kwezinye izifunda ngaphansi kweKwaZulu Natal. MEC, most of the landfill sites in the province, you know this fact, are owned by local municipalities, and only 2 out of many landfill sites that we have here are privately owned. How I wish Honorable Shomuka was here during this debate so that he can listen to this. Honorable Chairperson. Honorable MEC, during our oversight visit to these landfill sites, we identified the following issues that need urgent attention. There is lack of capacity in terms of the personnel and equipment that is required to be in these sites. There is also lack of financial resources allocated for waste management by municipalities. There is poor or lack of proper infrastructure inside landfill sites as required by law. Some of these landfill sites owned by municipalities do not even have the basic necessity, which is the way bridges. So municipalities are losing a lot of money that can be generated through this program. This revenue, Honorable Chairperson, can be directed to other priorities of the municipality if bebenayo this facility. There are no clear programs, Honorable Chairperson, for recycling. Tons and tons of waste that is in these sites is recyclable materials. We really do not need to spend money, Honorable members, in managing this waste. Waste is our new gold. Communities need to be empowered to get into this space. The impact of the recent floods, Hambadale landfill site, in Umdoni, Ilovu, and Buffelsdry resulted in overtopping of the leachate. We speak big English in this area, honorable members. The overtopping of the leachate dams, which had an effect on the downstream users and the receiving environments. In Buffelsdry, Nje, we were not happy at all as members of the portfolio committee with how the management of the facility dealt with the overflows there. And we requested the department to ensure that that situation is corrected, and they must also deal with the non-compliance matters accordingly and report back to the committee on the steps taken by eThekwini municipality. Honorable Chairperson, we also received reports that wastewater treatment works were also affected by the recent floods, which led to some waterworks directing sewer to the rivers. During our engagements with the officials of the department led by Dr. Z. Dlamini, we discovered that even before the floods, these waterworks were not complying with legislative requirements, especially when it comes to protecting environments around them. Honorable MEC, we request a detailed report on the state of all the waterworks in the province. We do so mindful, MEC, of the fact that the waterworks do not fall under your department. However, you are entrusted with protection of environment in the province. We want to know the impact of all these transgressions on the environment. Honorable MEC, climate change is here. We do not have luxury of time to respond, plan, and have all these long consultation processes. We need to act now and so that we can protect all lives on earth. The time for lengthy consultations is over. We urgently need a climate change plan that will guide communities on how to adapt to current weather patterns. Whilst you are waiting for the decision of the cabinet on the plan, can you, Honorable MEC, lead an aggressive community awareness campaign as a short-term intervention? Abantu bakithi badinga ulwazi oluphelele ngobungozi obuhambisana nokunyuka kwamazinga okushisa emhlabeni. Abantu bakithi badinga ukuchazelwa ukuthi uma singashintshi indlela yokuphila nokuziphatha, amadolobha afana neTheku no Lady Smith ngelinye ilanga sovuka sekuhamadamu kungabonakali nokuthi kwake kwahlala abantu. Abantu bakithi badinga ukwaziswa ukuthi uma siqhubeka nokuziphatha ngalendlela singase sibe sengcupheni yokungakwazi ukutshala ukudla okungaholela ekunyukeni kwamazinga alabo abaphila ngaphansi kobubha. Abantu bakithi, Honorable Chairperson, badinga ukukhunjuzwa ukuthi akukho emthethweni ukukha isihlabathi eduze kwemifula ngaphandle kwemvume ngoba ayibikhona iplan to rehabilitate those areas. Uma bebona abantu abenza lokhu siyanxusa ukuthi babike kulabo abadila nalezi zinto. Abantu bakithi kudingeka sibafundise indlela zokongiwa kwamanzi kanye nengqalasinda yabo. Honorable MEC, in 2019 your predecessor Madube presented a coastal management implementation plan. Would you please, in your response time, report back to this House as to how far are you with that plan and what has been the challenges experienced by all our coastal municipalities. I'm asking for this report, Honorable MEC, precisely because when one drives along the coastal areas, one does not get a sense that there is a plan that is implemented by municipalities and relevant stakeholders asebenza ngayo. Honorable Chairperson, ngiyabulela.
Thank you so much, Honorable Member. We've received the apologies from the ACDP and so from the ATM. ATM and ACDP. Then our next speaker is from the IFP. For 5 minutes, it should be Honorable S. Modlin.
Honorable Madam Chair, Honorable MEC, Honorable Members. The recent floods that battered and wreaked havoc in KwaZulu-Natal has destroyed the environment. This must be a wake-up call that climate change is real. Climate change is not a distant threat. It is already costing the people of this country severely. The intensity and destructive force of these storms should come as no surprise. It is just foreshadowing a future we have to prepare ourselves for. Seas are getting closer and closer to where we live. I believe that there is an urgent need for more climate change awareness, outreach programs to ensure that everyone knows what climate change is about and what continued neglect and abuse will yield. Furthermore, we also urge businesses to go green and benefit both themselves and the environment. KwaZulu-Natal is affected by climate change, so using renewable energy is not only necessary but vital to protect the environment. Climate change requires a shift in thinking and behavior. There are costs in action and there are risks if we don't plan ahead. We must consider vulnerabilities caused by changing weather patterns in areas such as public safety and emergency response, roads and other infrastructure, buildings and homes. Isamalangu court case. Another important institution created by our government through the Department of Environmental Affairs is Isamalinguso Wetland Park. As the IFP, we welcome the court ruling delivered by Peter Maritzburg judge, who granted the interim interdict against hundreds of would-be occupants of the Futu Lula indigenous forest near Lake St. Lucia. Hundreds would-be occupants have now been ordered to stop entering or invading, clearing land or erecting any buildings inside the protected indigenous forest near the village of St. Lucia and Monzi. The Futulula forest is one of the last remnants of coastal lowland forest in the country, located in a region with highly impoverished communities. Illegal dumping and air pollution. Illegal dumping is a huge societal ill that we need to be more responsible about. The role and participation of the public is important to the success of any endeavor, especially municipal solid waste management that affects the environment, economy, and human health. Dumped waste is an eyesore. We call for more awareness on illegal dumping. We must be tough on these found to be involved in illegal dumping and stem the tide of irresponsible behavior that continues to destroy our environment. Further, the issue of air pollution remains another grave concern, especially the kind generated from the domestic burning of wood, coal, and other substances. Sand mining. The IFP is concerned about illegal sand mining in most parts of the province, as this causes serious environmental damage and the growing risk of severe erosion and damage to coastal areas. Again, we urge the MEC to ensure that local communities are benefiting from mines operating in the areas. There is a need to ensure that benefits derived from a mine are distributed properly throughout the community, as a lack of distribution can be a risk for companies through popular upsprings and protests by local people demanding greater benefits. Rhino poaching. The IFP calls for more concerted efforts to eradicate rhino poaching. Our suggestion on the issue of rhino poaching is to gather intelligence first, so we can take decisions from an informed position. State security needs to gather intelligence on rhino poaching in South Africa, and such intelligence would enable us to nip this problem in the bud. We simply cannot allow our rhinos to be poached, as they are part of our heritage. The IFP calls for a nationwide investigation into possible collusion between wildlife rangers and poachers who are killing rhinos. We are of the view that such an investigation should be conducted in order to ascertain whether there is any collusion between rangers and poachers. We also urge courts to ensure that the punishment befits the severity of the crime, and perpetrators must not be allowed to walk away and continue destroying our heritage. More education about environment at schools. We must educate and encourage young children about the importance of conserving nature. We must empower them to form green teams as well as environmental clubs, and encourage teachers to develop old school approaches to reducing, reusing, and recycling, and helping children to know how to make better choices for the future. The future belongs to our children, and schools should be at the forefront of educating and advocating for a future free from the disastrous effects arising from gross neglect and damage to our precious environment. Having made these comments, the IFP supports the budget. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Time is up. Our next and last debater is from the ANC, Honorable S.A. Duma, for 11 minutes.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson, for affording us this opportunity once again this afternoon. Let us greet our Honorable MEC, Honorable members present, and everyone watching in the virtual platforms. Apartheid was declared crime against humanity by the UN at some point in time. And I think we are all aware at this point in time. Unfortunately, today we are debating on this budget, Honorable Pillay, yet the AfriForum is in court demanding that the old flag should be refrained, should be utilized and come back. And unfortunately, in our country, we understand the type of judiciary that it might just slip around them, they might grant them, whereas it should be abolished, it must not be utilized. Why one is at this point in time starting at this? I hope and pray that what we did in the early 90s is still correct today. For me, if your surname is De Boer or De Boer, you should tremble each time thinking about the sins of your forefathers. In fact, you might find that there is a direct correlation between this surname De Boer and devil, because they are always uncouth. What they are reflecting shows that they don't understand what we suffered, the atrocities of the apartheid regime. I smell the apartheid when I'm sitting here or when I'm standing here. He is a direct remnant of the apartheid. He's got an audacity of talking about Ukraine. Ukraine, whereas there is a war, currently Africans have been oppressed during the war. There is Yemen, people are dying on a regular basis. Ethiopia, currently there is a civil war. In Palestine, people are suffering. Around African countries, but he's not saying anything. On a daily basis, they drive across Nanda, Mashu area. People have suffered through flood. They are flood victims. Is in this platform not saying even a word of comfort and a solace, at least to show that there is some solidarity, because around when there is nothing that you should be feeling around Africans in particular. It's nice to be Caucasian in this country because it's easy. You can just debate anyway, anyhow. We should be ashamed. Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Pillay has presented a debate which is progressive in nature. Unfortunately, we're still going to fight. I think you are quite aware of that. I'm just going to deliberate in particular on the entities. I think you have improved almost all of the entities have received clean audit or unqualified audit opinion, which is good from a face value. If there is a direct correlation and a causality effect that if you have spent and declared the clean audit and qualified, if it's reflect completely towards the services, will be glad. Unfortunately, Honorable Chairperson, take for instance Itala, it was given 164 million, 68% only has been spent in this financial year. You couldn't spend 51 million. Go to Richards Bay, RTZ, it was given 140 million, at least 97%, but 3 million was not spent. Imagine the effect it would have done in our people in particular. KZN film competition, 72% only was spent in this financial year. Go to Moses Kotane, 84%, 13 million was not spent or utilized. Trade investment was Natal, 91% spent. Go to KZN Shark Sport, 92% spent. 5 million was not spent. Dube Trade Port Corporation, 81% to spend. Tourism, KwaZulu-Natal, only 76% expenditure. In fact, the only entity that was able to spend, and unfortunately we are not going to be happy because it's only gaming and betting, because the major beneficiaries are the depots of this world. They have a direct relationship with that entities, and it has not been transformed. So let us ensure, Honorable MEC, because you are astute, you are one MEC who we know that when it comes to transformation can do a nice work. So you've been given an assignment. Just ensure that at some point in time, there is a direct translation of transformation when it comes to the expenditure pattern. In fact, economic development, Honorable Chairperson Zwide, we should be clapping hand only if they have over expenditure, because we understand what we have gone through as Africans in particular. Our business people are suffering. In fact, Honorable MEC, our people are crying that unfortunately in the outer years, you'll have lost almost 2 billion, but what we are appropriating as honorable members is not even spent in particular time. So those are the matters that we must mention. Honorable Sapeta has already indicated that women in particular in this province, like the entire Africa and the diaspora, are the one who are suffering the total onslaught. Why don't you prioritize them? You go to growth fund these days. It's a good thing that to growth fund they are able to manage their finances. Unfortunately, those finances are not utilized correctly towards our people. I'm sure these days they've got almost 2 billion in their reserve. It's a good thing, but we can't clap hands, because if you go to growth fund as an African, if you are blacklisted and all those things, they are going to treat you like a bank. In the bank, you know, only those who can benefit are the depots of this world. If you're African, they will see you with a jaundiced eye. They will be looking for collaterals. Why do you ask the same stringent measures that are being utilized? Because we understand that the banking sector in our country does not have a mandate of transforming the lives of our people in particular. So these entities, we thought that they've been designed deliberately to ensure that Africans are suffering. Our entrepreneurs emerging, the youth of this country, because they are suffering, just ensure that you complement their effort. After the submission of the business plan, it should be the assignment of the entity. They must just go with you hand by hand until it is approved, until the expenditure pattern have been monitored. That's how we are going to do. Unfortunately, Honorable MEC, we worried as well that in terms of key performance indicators, key performance areas, and the scorecard in terms of your benchmark, why would you give someone a bonus if all these things have not been achieved? Because where we are seated, the issue of consequence management, Honorable Premier spoke about consequence management. It is now a right time. We will be so shocked, and we are skeptical that if we are sitting as these portfolio committees, why do we have to approve and appropriate the budget that is not going to be spent on time? The budget that we know in terms of scorecard, they are not going to ensure that they change our people's life. We must not be apologetic at this point in time. I'm sure Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Pillay mentioned nicely the issue of SAPREF. We differ, Honorable Pillay, that issue of SAPREF, that issue of Shell, should be something that should be taken from a face value. Go to deeper details. Check the due diligence. In nature, the cartels are usually, when they say this is for sale, it is because it has run down of the profit margins. You might find that we will buy something and will be shedding job. It will be this government that will be blamed, unfortunately. And the Tepurs of this world will just stand up and lambast and lament at. Yet they don't even qualify because they'll be benefiting. In fact, in our country, our economy, Honorable Chairperson Zwide, it's still benefiting those, the minorities, the Caucasians in particular. We appropriate 140 billion in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Let's say, for instance, we've got 45 billion of infrastructure. The large chunk of that will be spent towards the well-established entities, the well-established firms. When will be the right time where we'll be changing? And we're saying that each and every district, fortunately, you preempted us, that's the issue of millionaires. I think I'm still firm on this point. Each district, we can create millionaires. At some point in time, billionaires. As this government, even on the goods and services, you appropriate the budget, but the expenditure pattern will still go to the previously, not disadvantage the haves, which is why they are here. Honorable Tipu has got a direct investment, direct interest on the issue of Zemvelo. Why? Because it's part and parcel of the system. He gets worried on the issue of rhinos because those NGOs are driven by them. They know, in fact, you'll think that when they are feeding the orphanage rhinos, it's because of interest. No. The issue of Zemvelo, Honorable MEC, is so advanced, it cannot be done by a peasant from Malwazi, Mlazi, Mzumbe, Newcastle. Only those who are very advanced, delicate. You must have a drone, you must have a chopper, you must have serious, the issue of budget, you must have a buyer as well, who will just know that where will do, if even the ordinary members, if I can just ask you, where would you sell a rhino horn? But Honorable Tipuru will tell you a direct response because they are aware of these things. They are part and parcel of this syndicate. Yet, when they get a platform, they behave as if they just want to assist. There is nothing that they want to assist. We are the government that must change people's life. We must be the one who must suffer the onslaught of going an extra mile. Honorable Pillay, at some point in time for me, even if you get a qualified audit, but if the direct translation, you've got more employment, if our people's lives have been changed, we will understand because even on the issue of conspicuous consumption, our people, if they don't have anything, they will fight against us. They are not going to vote for this government in the future if we are apologetic like this because the haves will not going to vote for us. I thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Honorable Puma. Thank you so much. It's now for the Honorable MEC to respond. He utilized 17 minutes, 3 minutes. He's left with 17 minutes.
I'll give him 20.
Can I have the origin?
Over to you,
Thank you
MEC.
very much. Let me express appreciation to all the members who participated in the debate. And in fairness to each one, I think Chairperson Ngumalo, thank you for your sober report as usual. And I think the key point it's a challenge for all of us to take the programs to scale because the numbers that we produce are just touching the surface. We concede that, but we hope, and this is something that needs to be measured better, that we go back over time as to all the SMMEs we've touched, how many of them have been able to sustain, I think is a key issue which we'll be looking at measuring. Honorable Mshengu, I hope he has joined as well, is still in. I think we appreciate his report as well, and I think we take the points, and if there's time I'll come back to it, especially as far as waste management is concerned. I think it's covered in other members' inputs, and I'll deal with it at that point in time. Let me just say that with regard to Zemvelo issues, and a number of speakers have touched on that, but in relation to Honorable Mshengu, I think the issue of the imbalance as far as the proportion of cost of employees is a historical matter. I think we've agreed in our discussions that it needs a radical overhaul, and a critical milestone to that overhaul is the appointment of the new board. I regret very much that there has been that delay in the appointment, but I did listen to the portfolio committee and re-advertised, because you were not happy with the quality of the nominees that emerged in that first round. So that caused some delay as well, but I think my final consultation processes, I don't have absolute power in these matters, but my final consultation processes are underway, and I say commit to that 2-week period. Honorable Mshengu, I accept as well, and I've already started actually as to the potential for external funders. There are a lot of institutions who have either a philanthropic or other interest in the sector and are prepared to fund. We are wary of the risks, but the first step to getting that funding is strong and proper governance, integrity in the systems, and where there are actual deliverables from the monies that are invested. So again, I come back to the appointment of the board being the next milestone, a permanent CEO, and then systematically dealing with each of the issues. Honorable Shengo as well, with regard to commercialization, that is underway. Yes, it hasn't gone as quickly as we would have wanted to, but we had an interesting parallel matching with the Smangaliso's processes. They've got exactly the same process underway. They had an important exercise where we tested the market, which we participated jointly with the national department, and it's very encouraging. There's been significant appetite from the private sector, but as usual and understandably, they're interested in the detail of the terms and conditions under which that commercialization will be made possible. Honorable Sbejla, thank you. You always bring us back to the ground. Your considered, insightful input, and we cannot help but listen and then take the wisdom that you give us with your input. I think firstly your analysis of the South African economy and taking us back to the fundamentals of it in terms of the historic dispossession and poverty, that's the bottom line to everything, and to what extent we are impacting on that. And that's a timeless reminder that you bring to us about that fundamental. I think again the speed with which relief gets to beneficiaries, we take that point. It's a contradiction because unfortunately we're not quite there with that capable state that we want to build, and when there are no proper controls, then there's too much of a risk that will give the likes of Honorable De Boer another 10 hours to talk about. But unfortunately that controls then also causes the delay, but I'm sure we are going to get it right in due course. I'm not going to be able to respond to everything, but I want to come back to your input on the other climate change issues. The sequence of my notes doesn't allow me to do so now. But that we have, when you raise the issue of women in the VULA, we did the exercise. The current VULA analysis is 49% women, 51% men. So it's not as bad as what we thought it was. And there's a firm commitment that the next round will be compulsory, at least 50% women beneficiaries. Honorable Governor, I think thank you for your input, and as usual, a very constructive input. I take your point about the loans, but again, it comes back to what Honorable Duma said with regard to the Growth Fund Trust. What is the sector that you're dealing with? Why do these people come to the Growth Fund Trust and not to the banks? Because they have a certain risk element that the banks are not going to give it to them. So now you can't on the one hand say, look, you want to Growth Fund Trust to take that risk and give the loan, but when some occasions, as have been listed in those items, those risks come to pass, then you start saying you want to take a big sledgehammer and knock the Growth Fund Trust for having taken that risk and given the loan. So it's quite a tightrope to walk, but even then I want to say that the future of the Growth Fund Trust is under debate, whether it still warrants standing alone or whether it could be more effective in some other format, and we will report on that in due course. Honorable Dubois, I don't want to spend too much time on you. I think others have already. Let's start. It's unfortunate you started with Ukraine, but that reflects your priorities. I'm sure you saw the Zapiro cartoon, where the people are emerging from the bomb shelter, and they say, oh, the bombing has stopped, but what is that whining noise? And the whining noise was your leader still talking outside. I think we should take some lessons from that. Unfortunately, I think you have a schizophrenic problem. Because as Honorable Zbigniew said, you know, we are able to deal with you on a very personal level, have very rational conversations, and in the private discussions you express, I mean, for me, credible commitment to the fundamentals of the challenges of our country. But once you take the platform, I will describe it as you reduce it to an election pamphlet and slogans. There is no insightful consideration of the facts and debates in the matter. I refuse to be defined as you define me. In fact, I resent the way you, in a very cheap way, try to define me in that way. I think most of my leaders are very credible people of the highest ethics and morals. And yes, we have challenges. And that's the one thing about us as the ANC. We're not afraid to say we have this problem, we have this crisis, we must fight corruption. We can deal with the Zondo Commission as we are dealing with it, as raw as it is, as painful as it is, as hurtful as it is. But if that is the truth, we have the political integrity to put it on the table and say we must deal with it. So don't preach. It offends us. It offends us when you come across as preaching a holier-than-thou attitude. With regard to Ezemvelo and rhino poaching, let me now come back to dealing with things in a sensible way, because you're raising correct issues as far as Ezemvelo is concerned. My colleague members have raised it. We have raised it. I raised it in the department. It's an entity in crisis. No, there's no dispute about that. We want to change it, like many other things. We come back to the board being a critical milestone, but with regard to rhino poaching in particular, I think it might be a mixture stick with the calendar years versus financial years. But the truth is that there was a significant improvement in the management of the rhino poaching challenge, not too long ago. There was forces were marshaled, external support, there was police, there was the national department, and so on. Things have slipped, there's no doubt about it. And what are the causes of that slip? It remains a bigger problem, there's no doubt about that, because it's a worldwide problem. And we have the biggest, amongst the biggest numbers of rhinos, therefore that problem will express itself in our country. But it even relates to things like how the operations in the Kruger National Park work out and how successful they are and how syndicates then move. It relates to our own capacity issues, which we concede. And I'm quite happy to state publicly on record that we are very, very concerned about infiltration of criminal elements and the syndicates into the workforce of Ezemvelo. Now, I also want to say in defense of the Premier that I have that report that you referred to. I have that report. I'm prepared to share it with you on a confidential basis, because the contents are critical to an effective fighting of the syndicates. So please accept our good faith as far as that is concerned, and we'll share it with you on a confidential basis, and I'm sure I can rely on your integrity as far as that is concerned. Okay, I'm not going to. Yeah, again, you know, it's actually some of your comments became unpatriotic. When you effectively start to saying to investors, don't invest in Kzn. That's how I interpreted your input. And yet I've listed company after company that's investing in the hundreds of millions and billions because they have confidence and understand our competitive strengths. Be critical by all means. That's the essence of our democracy, that you can be robust in your criticism. But add value to taking our people forward. Honorable, yeah, I regret having to come back to your cheap politics. I must be quite blunt about it. But it can't be left unchallenged. The truth is that the vast majority in our country, including your supporters, want the ANC under Cyril Ramaphosa to succeed, because they know that's the only possibility of taking our country forward. You glibly say, take this ANC out, but sensible people, ordinary people know, if there's no ANC, what will there be? It won't be the DA, because you haven't got a snowball's chance in hell of winning a majority in our country. So, let me depart from that. Honorable Seja, I think we will always respect your input but disagree with you, because your approach reflects a populism that will simply not be sustainable. We accept your input about the risks that if we don't address poverty, if we don't address unemployment, I mean, that is what keeps us from sleeping at night. Those challenges are big. Those are the challenges that overwhelm and dominate our approach. But we can't solve the problem by printing money. And that's many examples in the world, Venezuela and others, where that problem manifested itself. But in other matters, I agree with you when you talk about creating incentives for investment in Umlazi, and that talks to our township and rural economy strategy. But again, there's deeper issues. It's about planning, spatial planning in particular, and if we have time, we'll go through it on another day. Honorable Mchali, again, thank you for your input. You also spoke about Ezemvelo, which I think I've dealt with. Ecotourism and the commercializing, I've dealt with it. But I just want understand also, when many of you mentioned that, or two of you mentioned that, if we're creating these jobs, why is there unemployment problem? The truth is, as a state, we'll not be able to create jobs to that scale that will impact on it. Our efforts are mitigation efforts, stopgap measures, providing a safety net. That's what EPWP is all about. In fact, we need to revisit the original conceptualization of EPWP. It wasn't supposed to be a permanent job. It's a entry-level job that people move on to. But that's work for another day. I take Honorable, who was it, on MKI, Honorable Shinga, thank you very much for your input, and we take note of your comments on technology hubs and broadband. Honorable Kunene, thank you. You did half my job with regard to Honorable De Boer, but I know you were forced into it. I could see that you departed from your prepared speech to deal with that because you had to deal with it. You see, Honorable De Boer, you distract us from the real work, and that's a problem. Honorable Rajbansi, thank you for your inputs. I take the point about advertising in different newspapers and make it more accessible and transparent. HOD is here and make sure that happens. Honorable Sbishla, I think your input was critical on the climate change, and I confess that we have not been able to not articulated it sharply enough. From where I'm sitting, we have dealt with it internally, set up some teams to start to talk to the issues or act on the issues that you have raised. But there are two or three different aspects to it. Firstly, there's the international thing, because as one country, we're not going to impact on the outcome of climate change and stop the ice melting in the Arctic and Antarctic. That's a collective international effort. But there is the regulatory side of things, and I think there, a re-examination of whether our laws are enough or whether it needs to be tightened further, and enforcing what we have on all the issues that you have spoken about. But the most important, I think, for immediate purposes is the adaptation side. I can tell you that we're already dealing with the Durban South Basin, where there's a risk to future investment because it's possibly going to be uninsurable unless they are different. Okay, nobody expected 310 millimeters in 24 hours, understandable. Now that it has happened, we can't say we can't expect it again. So the question is, what mitigation measures are going to be put into place? That's going to be a massive exercise requiring a massive investment with the Tegwini as a whole looking at its stormwater management. I learned a lot in this period. I mean, I didn't know that there were 52 canals that were taking water in one way or the other into the Durban Harbour. I'm not sure how many of you knew that. Then the extent to which the debris came down. And that's the other thing which we need to get experts. So it wasn't necessarily that stormwater drains were blocked. It was debris that came down and blocked entire bridges so that the natural flow of the water was not possible. And then the water then found its own way and caused the damage that it did. So we'll need the best expertise both in the country to apply its mind to that. And we've already had discussions with the national minister about putting that team together. In fact, just the other day at the Interministerial Committee, it has to be a joint effort with ETIA, Kokta, eThekwini, the national, and the national department. Yes, the port is, I think we'll deal with the port on another day. Mr. Modley, thank you for your input again. I just wanted the just transition with regard to climate change. We need to get to grips with that, what we mean by the just transition. It's been said that those of us as countries who contributed the least to climate change are having to suffer the most. Now they're saying that so ESCOM must effectively, and I'm oversimplifying the argument, is saying that ESCOM must stop using coal or stop researching and stop doing all kinds of things. Yes, that's our resource, we have it for the next 100 years, and you want us to just... So the concept of the just transition is something that needs to be unpacked, and we're happy to have trade-offs with the world. I'm happy with the money that they've secured. It's not clear what are the terms and conditions of it. I certainly don't think it's enough, but we're happy to trade off with the world as far as the terms and conditions with regard to our carbon-heavy industry is concerned. Illegal dumping, sand mining, and rhino poaching, again, Honorable Modley, I agree with you. And the schools program, we have a schools program already. We need to massify it, I think, further. And it can't be us alone. It has to be in partnership with the Department of Education. I've still got 1 minute 35 seconds left. Okay. Hey? Okay. Hey? Thank you. Okay, Honorable Duma, you again, you've in your usual way have demolished the other arguments that they were there. What was left of it to demolish, I think others did quite a bit. Look, we're going to, again, I think most people will understand that having regard to the South African history and context, that with all the ANC's weaknesses and failures, which we admit and we are correcting, there's a fundamental depth to which you have to go to understand the character and consciousness of the South African people and the history we come from. That's why when they have that debate, if not the ANC, who else, people struggle. Because only the ANC that captures that deep consciousness that reflects the history of the majority of the people. And most people accept the priceless legacy of the ANC throughout its history. And that's why all the heroes that you will point to in South African history will generally come from the ANC. That's why it places such a burden on us as this current generation who are holding office to correct the mistakes and maintain the heights or the moral heights of that particular legacy. And I think we all are happy to try to live up to that particular challenge. Honorable Duma, again, you spoke about the, I think ETIA itself got a clean audit, by the way, and I'm sure if we didn't, then that would have been. And I'm actually indirectly impressed that out of the full range of ETIA's responsibilities, 7 programs and 13 entities, if you split Itala, that you focus just on 2 or 3 issues. And that, I think, is a credit to the team, the head of department, and his entire. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable MSc. Honorable members, we have come to the end of the debate, and I wish to thank all of you for your cooperation and participation. Members, please know that tomorrow is Thursday, umhlaka 12.
is a party caucus day. Hence, the proceedings will resume on Friday, the 13th at 9. And the one that's using the link to connect will get that link about connectayo. Sizoba kwi chamber. So those that are coming physically, they must come to chamber. We'll be dealing no vote 2. Once vote 2 debate is over, the committee of the whole house will thus be concluded and the proceedings will revert back to normal sitting, wherein the voting on the 2022 appropriation bill will take place at the end of the voting. The proceeding that dealt with the votes will thus be concluded. Once more, I wish to take this opportunity to wish all the honorable members and guests safe journey back home. Abazayo ke sobonana ngoLwesihlanu ngoba kusasa sinama